How are y'all today? All right, I always like scan the room to make sure there's no boys before I just say welcome ladies, and then I look up and there's a guy in the back. I'm like, oops, sorry. But it looks like it's just a room of ladies today. So sweet, we can talk about all kinds of things then. Just kidding. Welcome to the Breadbeckers. I recognize a lot of you. I just saw you a few days ago. I don't know what it is. I obviously have a problem scheduling classes when, horrible weather is coming in. So Friday was ice and, all that didn't happen. And so we're just going to pray that today, none of the stuff that they're expecting to happen is going to happen. So we're also going to pray that we get done really fast in case the power goes out, because don't really know what we're supposed to do if the power goes out. Actually, I take that back. We've got this little butane burners, and so you guys might still get soup, but those at home, they're going to lose out because they're watching on the web streaming. So maybe if the power goes out, maybe in the next couple of weeks, I'll redo the soups that they don't get to see, and we'll tape those little short ones that have those recipes so they can at least see how to make them. So, but the handout is available. Speaking of the handout, did everybody get a copy of the handout? Okay. And I think we had to do some rearranging. We printed all the handouts yesterday, and then as I was going over it with the girls, I realized that one of the instructions for one of the soups had gotten moved over behind a different soup. So we had to tear those pages out, reprint those pages, and then last night I decided to add another soup. Because I am my mother's daughter and I add things at the last minute to classes that I've never done before and recipes that I've never done before and serve it to you guys, absolute strangers. So, it's good. We're going to have fun no matter what. So everyone got a handout. Really quick, who here, this is your first class? Well, okay. Wow. Alrighty then. Well, I hope you're not disappointed by the end of the day. Those of you who have been to classes before, just because of the weather that is out there today, I'm going to go ahead and tell you where the exits are. There's one through the curtain here, out that corner of the building. There's one straight back. You see the little red sign, emergency exit. There's one there. There's obviously the front door that you came through, and then there's also a door at the end of the building that you can also go through. Bathrooms, there is one in the hall, and then there's a door right back here, and through that door is our little prep kitchen, and there's a restroom also in there. I will go ahead and tell you there's water over here. There's water, ice and water in the cooler there. The bottles of water, those bottles of water are yours to take, and there's a little jar, a donation jar sitting on top. If you would make a donation to my mom, Sue Becker, her nonprofit organization, and you can pick up pamphlets about that if you would like. I think that takes care of that, so let's pray and let's get started, because I really don't know how long this class is going to take. It should go fast though, because we're going to use our pressure cookers. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this group of ladies that have come wanting to learn how to make comfort food soups for their family, to make it easy, to make it fast. Please be with us today while we're here. Keep us safe. Lord, I just pray that you would hold off this weather that's out there, that they're predicting that's going to come in, that you would keep everyone in the surrounding areas safe, Lord, because we know that you do calm the wind and the waves and the storms, and that they have to obey your every command, Lord. And I just pray for protection over these ladies as they head home this afternoon, and their families, wherever they may be, that you would bring them all back home safely together so that they can gather around the table as a family and spend time together eating the food that you have created for us to eat as food. Be with us today, Lord. Help the food to come out the way that I have it planned. Help me to speak clearly. Help me to be an encouragement to this group of ladies and to everyone watching from this day forward and into the future. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right, let's get started. First of all, the recipe that I threw in at the last minute, I think is actually at the back of your handout, because like I said, we threw it in at the end. Karen, my aunt, very kindly made it in like mega large font for you. This recipe is actually straight out of our cookbook. I don't know if you knew that there was some soup recipes in the back of the Bread Becker's recipe collection, but there are. There is an Ezekiel stew using the Ezekiel mixture of grains and beans. There's a recipe in our cookbook for the Ezekiel stew that's very good. And then there's also this 16 bean soup that I've made for you. Now, because several of my recipes do have meat, and you know, I know that not everybody eats meat like I do. So I wanted to make something that was strictly vegetarian for you today. So if you'll flip to that 16 bean soup, because it's actually ready. I had it cook before class, so it's ready to go, but I just want to walk you through this recipe really quick, and then I'll get them serving this for you, because I'm totally throwing you off because we threw this one in. We are going to do it first because I think it's ready. I may open it up and the beans not be done, and we'll have to cook it a little longer, and we'll just go with it. One thing that I did differently from this recipe, and I'll tell you that this pot is about 3/4 full, and you'll see it when I open it up here in just a minute. I halved this recipe to go in this pot. All right, so this whole recipe makes a lot of soup. Okay, I left the ground beef out because I wanted to do strictly vegetarian for you. Left the ground beef out, and instead of using the bouillon, and I'll tell you that when Mom wrote the cookbook in the very beginning, we used to carry soup bases and bouillons, especially Y2K. We carried all that stuff, and we don't carry that anymore. And we've kind of gotten away from using bouillons and things like that. So instead of the water and then adding the bouillon, I just used our Imagine organic vegetable broth is what I used there. Instead of using the bouillon and instead of just doing the water, I used the vegetable broth there. Everything else is the same, like I said, with the exception that I did half the recipe so that I didn't have just enormous amounts of soup. I still think we're going to have plenty for all of you guys. These are and we're going to go over pressure cookers more, but this is our line of VitaQuick Fissler pressure cookers. These are not, that does remind me, these are not like your grandma's pressure cookers, you know, that had the weight on it, that you'll notice, also cross this out on your handout, you'll notice she said reduce heat and simmer and cook about 8 to 10 hours. In a pressure cooker, you do not have to do that. Now, there's the directions if you don't have a pressure cooker yet. I promise you by the end of this class, because I'm doing just about everything in a pressure cooker, you're probably going to want one. So I'm sorry, maybe I should call your husbands and apologize, because you're going to go home wanting one, or you're going to go home with one and say, oh honey, but you can make him soup for dinner and everything will be fine. I only pressured this for an hour. There was no quick soak. There was no soaking the beans overnight. I scooped them out of my pail of 16 bean soup mix, right into the pot, locked the lid, brought it up to pressure, and pressured it for 1 hour. And that was it. Now we're just going to pray that it's done. The nice thing about pressure cookers, though, if it's not done, we're just going to lock the lid, bring it back up to pressure, and add maybe 15-20 minutes to the cook time. So this is still something, though, if you wanted to do in the morning while you're making breakfast or getting stuff to get this going and cooking, and then set it off. Let it sit there on the back of the stove all day long and have it for dinner that night. That's the great thing about pressure cookers, and that's the great thing about soups, is a lot of times you can put them on in the morning, and even if you did cook it all day in a regular pot, 8 to 10 hours, you could put it on first thing in the morning and it would be ready for you that evening. I'd have to turn it upside down. I think it's the 10 liter. Is what this size is, okay? There are a couple of methods of releasing the pressure. There is the natural release method, and that's just letting it sit off the heat and come down naturally. It is exactly what it sounds like, a natural release. Then there is a quick release method, and you're gonna see this all throughout my instructions. Quick release is pressing this button to release the pressure and release the steam. The cool thing about Fissler and the way that their handles are created, the steam actually goes through a process in the handle so that when it comes out, it's not going to burn you here. It's also going away from you and not just blowing in your face, okay? The nice thing about these pots too is you cannot open this lid until all the pressure is released. So that's a nice safety feature, okay? So this is called the quick release method. The cold water release method, you take the pot over to the sink, you run cold water along the edge, it's going to drop that pressure very quickly. In places where you would use that cold water method is one, if you're extremely impatient and you're ready for the pressure to come down now, or if you're wanting to stop the cooking, because as long as it's up to pressure, it's still cooking. A lot of times you'll see, if you wanted to do a pot of rice, you'll see that a pot of rice, it's recommended to use the natural release method. You cook it for 20 minutes, a pot of brown rice, and then set it on the table and let it naturally release. The whole time it's releasing pressure, it's still cooking, okay? A lot of times rice will say that, okay? Now, once all the pressure is out, it's almost there. Did y'all hear it snap? And now I can totally take this off. Now look, can y'all see? It's still boiling hot. And this has potatoes and carrots and garlic. And what I used, because I have totally fallen in love with this at the grocery store, is the, what are they called? Like Inspiration something. It's the little baggie of little potatoes, and they've got the little Yukon Gold bag. They've got the fingerlings. I love the medley. That's the purple potatoes, the Yukon Golds, and the red potato. So that's what I cut up in here. So it just gives it a lot more color with the purple potatoes and the Yukon Golds and the little reds, and then of course the carrots as well. And then the 16 bean, and y'all can see our little 2-pound baggie of 16 bean soup mix down there. It really has, in fact, okay, I'm coming down front because I wanted to, no I'm not, I've got some right here. I'm gonna read to you what all is in the 16 bean. We've got pinto beans, red beans, pink beans, great northern beans, small white, black turtle, light kidney, dark kidney, baby lima, large lima, garbanzo beans, black-eyed peas, yellow split peas, green split peas, lentils, and pearled barley. So there's one thing that's not a bean, and it's the pearled barley, but that's in there. It would also be a great addition to your grain repertoire to mix in with your wheat flours, kamut, spelt, hard red, hard white, for pancakes, muffins. Anytime you combine a grain and a bean together, you make a complete protein. That's why I love the Ezekiel mix so much. That has 3 beans in it. You do want to be careful when you start mixing your bean flours and your grain flours when you're making things. Obviously, you couldn't do that with a yeast bread. Too much bean flour would mess up the moisture content and the protein content in the grain, and it wouldn't rise very well. But you can get away with it in things like pancakes and muffins and things like that, okay? How much to grain, how much beans to grain would I do? I would probably do something like, let's see, the pancake recipe calls for 3 to 4 cups of flour. So I usually grind, if I was going to grind 3 cups of grain to make my 4.5 cups of flour for pancakes, let's just use that as an example, I would maybe do a cup of beans and 2 cups of grain, 2 to 1. Something like that on something like pancakes and muffins and things like that. All right, I'm gonna grab a spoon so that I can make sure that these beans are done. And this is gonna be so hot, so we're gonna try one of the big fat kidney beans and see if it's done. Yes, it is. Okay, girls, y'all might have this one. Thank you, thank you. All right, now we're going to jump around just a little bit, only because I want to have certain things done at the same time. So flip in your handout to the quick dinner rolls. okay? Move this over. You'll notice that the quick dinner rolls call for one basic dough recipe. This is where I love my Zojirushi bread machine. Using the dough cycle or using my own homemade, one of my own homemade settings just for dough, I will have only the knead portion of the different phases that the dough goes through. I'll have only the knead cycle on, and the knead is 20 minutes. But when I set one of my homemade cycles with just the knead for 20 minutes, I am then able to use the timer function. So when I got here this morning, I threw all my ingredients in my Zojirushi, put it on my memory cycle to just knead for 20 minutes, and then I used the timer to set it for when I wanted the dough to be ready. I use this feature all the time at home. I'll either have it set, I'll put everything in the night before, have the dough ready for me first thing in the morning, or put all the ingredients in the morning, set the timer so that the dough's ready for me when I walk in the door when I get home. One thing that I'm going to tell you that I do to that basic dough recipe that's found in our cookbook, I use extra yeast. Okay, the yeast police is not going to come to your house and tell you that you can't use extra yeast in that recipe. Using extra yeast is just going to make it rise faster, which is nice when you're in a hurry, okay? So I'm going to take this. Like how much extra? I'm talking, the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon. I use 2. I double it. Okay? I also, when I take my dough out of here, I will go ahead and preheat my oven. My oven, the lowest temperature that it goes to is 170 degrees. So I will turn it to 170 degrees and I'll let it preheat while I shape my dough. This is my new favorite way of making dinner rolls. Little cookie scoop. And I will just plop it in there. By using the extra yeast and having my oven preheated to 170 degrees, I can then put this into that warm oven, and I usually turn it off at that point so that it doesn't slowly bake. I'll turn my oven off, but I'll set the timer, say 15, 20 minutes tops, and they will have risen double in size, okay? I actually did this last night. I came home and I made chicken pot pie for dinner. And my daughter is allergic to milk. Any of you who have come to a class that I've taught before know that my daughter Catherine is very allergic to milk. And they go to the King's Academy here in Woodstock. And they have pizza every Friday. That's a fundraiser lunch that you can get. And so they have pizza. Well, she can't have pizza from, you know, any pizza place because it all has cheese. So I usually try to make pizza and have it on hand for her on Friday so that she can still take pizza and have pizza with all of her friends and not feel left out. So I knew that I needed to make some pizza crust. So I put on a batch of dough while I was making dinner, and then after dinner my dough was ready. And so I made 2 little pizza crusts for her. And I did the same technique that I'm about to talk to you about. I rolled my pizza crust out, I put them on my pizza pan, I let them rest about 10 minutes or so, and then I baked them in the oven for only about 10, 12 minutes. Then I took them out, with nothing on them, just the crust, just a plain crust. Then I took them out, let them completely cool. I stacked them on top of each other, slid them down in a gallon Ziploc bag, because I make little personal pizzas for her, and I put it in the freezer. On Friday morning, when I get up, I'll probably take one out the night before. I'll set it out, let it completely thaw overnight. And then Friday morning when I get up, I'll put her toppings on it, I'll pop it in the oven, I'll bake it for about 8 minutes, and then off she goes. Okay? I had all this dough left over, so I stood there and I scooped out little rolls, put them in my muffin pan. Down here on your handout, you'll see the fully baked method. If I wanted to have these for dinner right now, I would let them rise, and then I would fully bake them at 400 degrees for 12 to 15 minutes, okay? If not, if I want to half bake them and have them left over for later, in fact, Karen, wherever you are, if you'll get out of the back refrigerator behind Dad's office, if you will get the bag of dinner rolls out of the freezer, that would be great, if you can hear me. I've got a little bit of dough left over. That's all right. But if you do not want these for dinner right now, that half-baked method is exactly what I did kind of with her pizza crust last night and what I did with the dinner rolls that I made last night. I scooped them out, I let them rise in my warm oven, and then I took them out, let them completely cool, bag them up, put them in the freezer. And then when I'm ready for them, I will put them straight back into my pans and pop them in the oven for 5 to 7 minutes until they finish browning. And that's it. Frozen, straight from the freezer, which is great if you have soup left over. Karen, did you hear my memo of grabbing the dinner rolls out of the freezer behind Dad's office? Which is great if you have leftover soup and you want to have it for lunch and you want hot, fresh rolls to go with it. Just grab 4 little rolls out of the freezer, stick them in your muffin pan or whatever shape you've made them. If you've made them into little rolls, you can do this method with whatever shape roll you've got. I just like this. They look like little popovers when they're done, and they're quite tasty. So this is just a really nice way of doing it, and that way you can have a hot, fresh roll, or if you have a girlfriend over for lunch, then you can have fresh hot bread without having to go through all the ordeal of it, okay? I'm gonna pop these in the oven to warm, to rise in my warm oven. Turn that lower oven off. I'm just going to set this timer. And then would you bring me that? I'm actually going to let you guys put these in. But completely frozen. They're like just about to start turning brown. Now you could certainly, once these are baked, have a bowl that you've melted butter with a little bit of garlic and Italian seasoning, throw them in there and completely toss them. I did that. My husband is a fireman and I made spaghetti for them a couple weeks ago. And so I had a bag of rolls in the freezer. I took it to the fire station and took my pan with me, popped them in the oven, and then threw them in the bowl full of melted butter with a little garlic and Italian seasoning. And between 4 men and me and my 3 kids, they ate 24 of them. So, and that's it. I have kept them in the freezer because I made like a batch of 24 and I waited a week, took a few out, tested it, waited a few more days, took a couple out, tested it. I finally used up that bag and it took me almost it was like 3.5 weeks. And they still tasted like I had just made them that day. Now, obviously, the quality bag that you put it in, but I just used a gallon, zippy bag. If you will fill that one, and then I will put these in the oven in a few minutes when that other pan is ready to bake. All right, so now we've got our quick rolls going. So now, flip back to the beginning. I'm sorry, I'm making you guys jump all around today. Yes. Back to the pizza dough. The basic dough, I do use the basic pizza dough, and the reason I do is because the French bread dough has milk in it, and Catherine can't have it. So if you want to make a softer dough, adding milk or whey, if you drain your yogurt off and you need to do something with that whey, that's a great place to add it, is use it in place of the liquid in your bread recipe, if you can. Obviously, if you don't have allergies or anything like that. But I do use the basic dough recipe for my pizza crust. But any pizza crust recipe that your family likes, you can do that same half-bake method. Whey will make the dough softer. It sure will. It sure will. Any other questions before we move on? We good? Okay. No, not yet. I'm gonna bake them in a minute with the rest of the rolls. How many do we have? Have we counted? 36, 38. Okay, well then let's go ahead and let's pop these in for 7 minutes. Now at home, I only do them for 5. You're just gonna have to test out your oven. These ovens, unfortunately, do not cook as hot as they say that they are. They are a little tricky. So we're gonna bake these for the full 7 minutes, and they should be ready to go after I get finished talking to you about our next soup. So let's go back. Oh, go ahead. If I didn't put them back in the mini pan, if you freeze them in that shape and then just throw them back, they'll be fine. They'll be totally fine. If you want to just throw them on a cookie sheet, they've already solidified in that shape. They're not raw anymore. They're just not completely browned. So now you're just finishing off that cooking and that browning process and thawing them at the same time. So I think you could certainly throw them onto a cookie sheet and be just fine. Yes, ma'am. If you're going to use the whey in your basic dough recipe or any bread recipe, you're going to use it in place of some or all of the water. All right. Okay, let's go back to the beginning. If any of you came to the fall comfort class, then you saw Mom do this, roasting vegetables. And let me check on mine over here because I've got several pans roasting and they are looking good. Okay. I did not think that I liked roasted vegetables. And maybe it was just the kind that I'd had in the past. I don't know. And I certainly thought that it was difficult to do. It's not. And so I wanted to go ahead and just repeat this and give you the instructions. I'm not going to go over all of Mom's tips and techniques, but she really spells it out really nicely. And I just took these directions from her fall comfort class handout and just inserted it here. The reason why I wanted to do this for you is because you can take any old basic soup recipe that your family likes, a beef and barley or a chicken and rice or whatever your family likes. What do you do when you have a whole pot of soup for leftovers? There's only so many more nights that your family wants that soup. It was good the first time. It was maybe good the second time a couple nights later. But if your family is like my family, my kids are like, are you serious? We have to have chicken and rice soup again this week? They're not real crazy about it. So I wanted to give you a leftover idea. I'm going to give you a freebie too because I did this last night. But you'll notice the second recipe that I've got here is the Jubilee chicken and rice soup. This is one of Sharon Fescanen's soup recipes. It's one of my family's favorites. And they really, they do like it the second and sometimes the third time we have it for leftovers. But I had some leftover after the fall comfort class. I probably make this once every week and a half or so. I will make a pot of this soup. And I had some leftovers, and after the fall class, I really wanted some roasted vegetables. And so I made a whole bunch of roasted vegetables. I was like, I wonder what I could do with this. Well, I decided one day to add some of my roasted vegetables to this soup recipe, my leftover chicken and rice soup. Added a whole new level of flavors and textures and color. I mean, just made it something completely different. I then also added it to I had some roast beef left over, some like pot roast left over from Christmas. And so I took some of the pot roast, made a beef and barley soup, and added some of the roasted vegetables to that. And it was fantastic. It was really, really tasty. I have taken the roasted vegetables, I have added them to my pizza crust, and that's it. Sprinkled it just with a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top, and that was little sauce, all the roasted vegetables, and a little Parmesan cheese. It was so good. So good. You could certainly add it to, I think I gave you a couple of my favorites. I added some of them to a breakfast burrito, scrambled eggs, roasted vegetables, rolled it up in a tortilla for a breakfast burrito, and it was just so good. And so I went ahead and made a whole bunch of roasted vegetables and then just threw it in a Tupperware and put it in my fridge, and then added it to things or warmed it up, and that was my side dish one night with dinner. So endless possibilities. So I want to show you just how easy the roasted vegetables are. So I've got a few things. Of course, with roasted vegetables, you can really do whatever kind of vegetables you want. here again, I've got those medley of potatoes. There's the, I'll see the purple ones. I love those potatoes. I think they're just so pretty. I've made all purple mashed potatoes one time. My kids thought that was the weirdest looking thing. They loved it, but they were like, really? Purple potatoes? Biggest thing with cutting your vegetables is just try to make them all about the same size so they cook about the same length of time and they're all done about the same at the same time. Like I said, you could certainly do whatever kind of vegetables that you want. Obviously, your root vegetables are probably the most popular roasted vegetables just because of how easy it is. So I have some baby carrots here. This is also a great thing to do when certain vegetables go on sale at your local supermarket. Go ahead and buy them up and just roast them and then throw them in a Ziploc bag and put them in your fridge or put them in a Tupperware container. Sweet potato. I love sweet potatoes. It's funny, I never liked sweet potatoes growing up, and I think it's because the only time I ever had them was at Thanksgiving in a sweet potato with the pecans and the marshmallows and I mean, I guess that's great, but I didn't like that. I don't particularly like pecans and walnuts and nuts and things like that. So that was not for me. And then my mom made just braised sweet potatoes one night and covered them in garlic and the organic seasoning salt that we carry. Rocked my world. I decided that I really like sweet potatoes more savory with garlic and Italian seasoning and a little cayenne pepper, a little kick to them. Is there a difference between sweet potatoes and yams? Yes. Yes. I am being told yes. What is the difference? Okay, so they're totally different roots. A yam is the root of a different plant altogether. And then different size and different texture. Flavor. How would you describe the difference between the flavors? Yams are a little less tasty. Let's go just a few more minutes. That was 7 minutes? No, there's still 3 more minutes left on that timer. That was something else beeping. Oh, that timer's for, yes, that was a turnip. Sorry about that. You're right, that was, go ahead and set it for a couple more minutes. I know what that timer's for. That's for the bread that's rising. Okay, that was turnip. You could use celery root. You could use, like I did the turnip. You could do rutabaga. I mean, you could do any of your root vegetables that you want. Now, you could do bell peppers, red, yellow, orange bell peppers. That would certainly be beautiful. I do not like bell peppers. I don't like them roasted. I don't like them raw. I don't like them stir-fried. I don't like them cooked in anything. So this is my class, and I'm leaving them out. You had a question in the back. Ooh, butternut squash. Oh yeah, any of your squashes would be good roasted. Do you see how it really is? I mean, the sky's the limit. And then mushrooms. I do love mushrooms. This was another one I did not like when I was younger. Beets. Yep, you could certainly roast beets if you wanted to. Celery root is just, it's another root vegetable. I heard y'all talking over there about it. So I'm just, eggplant. I don't see why not. I don't see why not. All right, so what you're going to do now that you've got them all chopped, you want to toss them with olive oil. You want them to be well coated. I think Mom gave a recommendation of about a tablespoon per pound of vegetables is a good place to start. I'm just going to toss this together, and then you're going to salt them. Now, you're going to heavily salt them. I'll go ahead and warn you. So here I would make sure that I'm using the good, real, natural mineral salt that we carry. Hasn't been heat treated, has not been chemically tampered with, has not been bleached. So you just want to make sure that all of your vegetables, and they're trying to escape on me, are nicely coated with oil. Yes, you could certainly put them in a Ziploc bag and toss it all together. That would certainly work. And we're probably good with those rolls now. Thank you, Sharon. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to salt it, and then you're just going to taste one. You want the bite of that. You want a sharp bite of salt, and that's how you know that you've salted it enough. So I'm going to choose one of the things that I like raw. One of the only things I like raw is carrots. That's very good. Okay. One of the tricks to roasting is surface area and heat. So you don't want them to be piled on top of each other. You want them to have room around them to roast. I've got one pan done. So see how I made sure that they were all an even layer, and they're all starting to wrinkle up because they're nice and roasted and they're done, and so yummy. The very first time I ever did this for my kids, well, I didn't do it for my kids, I did it for me. And my daughter walked in and she said, "What are you doing?" That's the timer for the rolls rising. If you want to just, they can go straight into the oven, but will you bring it over here and let them see? These have risen for 15 minutes. See what just an extra tablespoon of yeast will do for your life? It makes things so easy. So easy. All right, we're going to just go ahead and pop those in the oven, okay? So the first time I ever roasted vegetables, I did them for myself, and I was just testing it out to see how I liked it and things like that. Well, my daughter, Catherine, walks in and she goes, "Ooh, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm roasting vegetables." She said, "It smells awesome in here." And I said, "Well, do you want to try it?" And she said, "Sure, I'll try one." And she said, "But I don't like sweet potatoes and I don't like mushrooms. And so I'll taste one of the regular potatoes." And I said, "Okay." So she tasted a potato. She's like, "That's really good." And I said, "Well, try this one. This is a turnip." And she's like, "Okay." So she tasted that. She's like, "That's really good." I said, just try the sweet potato this way." So she did. She goes, "That's not bad." And I said, "Go ahead and try a mushroom." She ended up, she was just picking them off my cooled off tray. And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute." I said, "That's enough. Go away. Go away." Next thing I know, she's got my two boys in there. "Y'all have to try these. These are so good." And they're standing there eating all of my roasted vegetables that I had made. And I'm like, "Guys, back off. You know, you're eating all my food here." They absolutely loved them. Absolutely loved them. So what I'm going to do y'all have another like couple of heating, cooling racks that we can put this on? I'm going to let you take these. I'm going to take the other two. One thing I did notice at home when I was doing these in several batches, I noticed that after like 2 cookie sheets worth, I really needed to kind of wipe off the cookie sheet, because if I had kept going, the little bits and everything that was on here started to burn. So I wiped it off and I started fresh on like the third batch or whatever. I'm gonna take that over there. And then if you will, let that cool for just a second. And then if you will just put them scoop them out of there and just put them in this bowl so that I can add them to our soup in just a minute. Okay? Let me find a dish for these, and then we will move on. And actually I'm not, because I've got all my cookie sheets tied up. If you will just go ahead and it doesn't have sides. I'll tell you, I like to do something with sides. Just so, especially with our USA line of pans, they're so non-stick. And I know I've told y'all this story a million times about the pizza that went flying across the counter the first time. I went from here to here, and this whole motion, the pizza goes shoo, 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 shoo. Thankfully it stopped. I've had cookies slide off when I'm taking them out of the oven because these pans truly are non-stick. So I do like using something with sides, and also so that the olive oil that you've coated this in, so that it doesn't drip off and into your oven. That 9x13 baking, like I think it's called a bacon roast pan or whatever, that certainly works. I think those are technically jelly roll pans, is what I've got. Karen's gonna take that one off, and then she'll throw it up here, and I'll spread these out so I can show you exactly what it looks like on the pan. And I'm gonna salt this just a little bit more, and then we can keep going. All right, so here is my other freebie of what to do with leftover chicken and rice soup, especially this particular one. No, it's fine with just my second batch. All right, I'm gonna slide this over so that y'all can see and so that it's in the camera and all that good stuff. Just put all of them in that bowl. And this might be a little thicker than I would normally do it, but no, it's good. So you saw about, one sweet potato, a handful of carrots, handful of grapes, handful of mushrooms, about 8 of those little potatoes. We're just gonna have to get our hands dirty. And that's it. I find that somewhere between 400 and 450 degrees is where I like to roast it at in my oven. Just kind of watch it. You certainly don't want anything to burn. You may have to, if it looks like the tops are getting too brown, but the vegetable isn't cooked all the way through, take it out, stir it up, put them back in, and let them keep going. Yes, ma'am. The veggie wash. I'm so glad you pointed that out. Yes, I love the veggie wash. This is an all-natural vegetable wash that we carry. It's chemical-free. It'll take the wax off of, it's citrus-based. It'll take the wax off of apples. I love washing my veg. You just spray it. I usually will fill my colander with all my produce that I'm washing. I'll give it a couple of squirts. I'll wash it with my hands or with these little veggie gloves work great. And then just wash all my vegetables off, and then go from there. Another couple of things that we carry that I really like. We have I'm gonna walk down front, Jim. As far as vegetable stuff goes, this is our Veggie Fresh. This you put in your produce drawer in your refrigerator, and it keeps things fresher. You keep it in your crisper for 90 days. So it's good for 3 months. I will tell you that the directions are kind of weird on this thing. It makes it sound so much more complicated than it really is. What you're gonna do is you're gonna rip open this plastic. There's a little plastic container inside, and inside that plastic container is a little white pouch that sounds like it's got rocks in it, okay? All you're doing, tear this off, pull that plastic container out, put the plastic container in your drawer. That is all you're doing. You're not messing with that white bag inside the plastic container, okay? You're not ripping it open and pouring it into the plastic container. You are ripping this plastic, take the container out, stick it in your drawer, okay? Telling you this because it says remove clamshell from plastic bag. Place clamshell in the crisper bin. Keep in crisper bin for up to 90 days. I think they've changed the directions because it was not that simple. I promise you it was not that simple the first time I did it, because the first time I did it, I opened it up and I was like, I guess I'm supposed to open the white bag and pour it into the plastic container. Well, the plastic container has holes all in it. So next thing I know, I have these little pebbly rocks spilling all over my kitchen, and I'm calling Mom going, what, please tell me I'm not this ridiculous and I'm not this dumb. And she's like, no, I did it too the first time. So they changed the directions. I know they did. But this is awesome. Another great produce herb. This is the herb saver, so that you can stand all your fresh herbs, because I'm using a lot of herbs today. Stand all your fresh herbs. You can fill it with water, and you just keep it on the door of your refrigerator, and it keeps it watered and keeps them fresher longer. So that's another nice tool. Okay. So we've got our chicken and rice, our Jubilee chicken and rice soup here. Still, I'm going to move it over to this one. I'm going to warm it up just a little bit, and I'm going to tell you about my little freebie recipe. I had a pot of this, like I said, left over this week actually, and so last night, this is a very thick chicken and rice soup. This is not a liquidy broth with a little bit of rice and a little bit of chicken, a little bit of vegetables. This is a nice, thick, almost stew-like consistency to this soup, okay? So what I did is I had some left over last night, walked in the door, took the leftover soup out of the refrigerator, I put it in a casserole dish, I mixed up my biscuit topping for pot pie, chicken pot pie. I poured my biscuit mixture over it, put it in the oven at 350 for 35 to 40 minutes, and we had chicken pot pie for dinner. But it was using the leftover soup in place of the traditional chicken and peas and carrots. They're already in there. And so my family ate the entire baking dish last night for dinner. In fact, I put a picture of it on Facebook of the empty dish. I said, well, I think that they liked the leftover chicken and rice soup made into chicken pot pie. They consumed every bit of it last night. I was like, oh, well, for me having that for lunch tomorrow, not that I'm going to need lunch today with all of this soup. So here is our Jubilee chicken and rice soup. And now I'm just going to add, look at that bowl of yummy roasted vegetables that I'm going to add to this. Yes, ma'am. What temperature did I bake my chicken pot pie at? 350 degrees for 35 to 40 minutes. And if you've never been to Mom's Cooking Under Pressure class, she has a fantastic chicken pot pie recipe in that class handout that is so easy. It's soft wheat with salt, baking soda, baking powder, and then melted butter and milk. And that is it. And it's a batter, and you just pour it over your chicken pot pie filling, and then it puffs up, and the crust was about this thick. And it was so good. Now, of course, I had to change a few things for Catherine last night, but she has I buy a soy sour cream for her to use as sour cream in recipes, and I have discovered that especially in baking or in mashed potatoes or whatever, a recipe that calls for milk, and I don't want to use, her flavored vanilla soy milk or rice milk, that would taste a little weird in chicken pot pie. I will mix her soy sour cream with chicken broth and just whisk it together, and it's creamy and it's white, and it works great in place of plain milk in a recipe like that. And they ate every bit of it. So I think we may have enough of this soup. What do you think? The boys in the back are not going to go hungry today. All right, we are ready for you to take that so they can get this and a roll. All right? So that's just one thing that you can do with leftover soups is add those roasted vegetables to just make it completely different and new. Yes, ma'am. You could certainly do a basic, like a drop biscuit type recipe. You could certainly do that. And it might be, I had her Cooking Under Pressure handout, which you can download from the website. Go to the classes and look for the Cooking Under Pressure class. And it'll be with the chicken pot pie recipe. But it's basically flour, salt, baking soda, baking powder, and then melted butter and milk. And that's all it is. So it's a very loose batter, and you just pour it over, and I spread it out, and that was it. Okay? All right, so we've gone over the roasting vegetables. We've gone over, you've got the soup there with the Jubilee chicken and rice soup that's so yummy. It'll become one of your family's favorites. Here comes the rain. And then the quick dinner rolls. Okay, let's go over. Our next recipe is the chicken corn chowder. Do I want to do that, or do I want to do... Let's actually flip one more page over to the corn muffins in a jam. Let's flip over to that. Let's get our bread baking. I'm just going to have to talk a little louder over the rain. And I'm sorry I keep fidgeting with my shirt. Normally I wear the boom mic over the ear mic, but it does not like, the boom mic doesn't like these induction burners. And if I'm doing a class where I'm only using the induction burner like once in the class, it's not a big deal. But since that's basically all I'm using today, we decided to use the lapel mic, and I picked obviously the wrong shirt to wear. It is a tank top that you keep seeing flash. So, you know, I'm saying, I'm not trying to be inappropriate here. So sorry that I'm like messing with my clothes. All right, let's make the corn muffins really quick. Now, if you are familiar with the muffin recipe at all in Mom's cookbook, you're going to see that this is the basic muffin recipe, okay? Nothing too extravagant here. I've got my soft wheat flour, and I've got my corn flour here that I ground right before class, and I did use white popcorn. I am totally loving the organic white popcorn that we're carrying right now. I like to pop it, and I love it for grits and for cornbread and things like that. You could certainly use kamut here or sorghum flour if you needed to do gluten-free. I love those combinations. But I had already ground my soft wheat this morning before I realized that, oh, I probably should have done the kamut or something like that. But oh well, it'll still be yummy. So we're just going to mix together our flour, our salt, our baking powder, and our baking soda. This is, if you come to any of my classes, and Mom's too, you will hear us talk about to market, and all of the yummy seasoning mixes that they carry, or that they make and we carry. This one in particular is called In a Jam. It is technically a dip mix, which all of their mixes are technically dip and spread mixes, but we like to use them for so many other things. This In a Jam is actually for, you mix it with cream cheese. The original recipe for the dip or the spread is you mix it with cream cheese and apricot jam, and you use it as a spread on bagels, which, by the way, we've got a bagel class coming up. You might want to sign up for that. It's going to be so yummy. But the In a Jam has almond pieces, so just if you've got any nut allergies, then do we have any almond allergies in the room? Okay, we're gonna need one chicken corn chowder without the corn muffin. I'm so sorry about that. My daughter's allergic to almonds too, so she can't have this either. But it's really nice because it's got dehydrated ginger in it. It also has jalapenos, dehydrated jalapenos. So it's got a little bit of kick with the sweet, with the ginger, with the almonds. It's just really nice. When I'm adding it to things like this, I don't want all the chunkiness to it, so I'll grind it up. This is my little Tri-Best personal blender. I made my cornbread at Thanksgiving this year and added the In a Jam. and then made my dressing with it instead of using Italian seasoning in my cornbread dressing for the turkey. And it was really, really nice. In my everyday muffins, I do all kinds of things. I use any grain that I'm in the mood for. Today I did soft and corn because I'm making corn muffins. Oh, for the bread that you're eating. The bread that you're eating, no, I did all hard white. For the quick dinner rolls that you guys are eating with your soup, I did all hard white. But you could do whatever you want. You could do 2 parts red, 1 part white. You could do kamut. You could do any of those things, okay? The question was, uh-oh, does somebody have an alarm thing on their phone? Oh, it's outside? Okay, well, if you don't mind putting your phones on silent for me, you can certainly still leave them on, but that would be great. Well, it would have gone off longer than that if it was the siren outside. Yes. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, Julie. Julie's question was, does it matter which rice blend you use for the soup? And before, I would have told you no, that it doesn't matter which one you want to use. But Pam, that works in our office, she said, oh, yes, it does matter. Do not do the black, whatever, it starts with a J. I can never pronounce that one particular rice, but it's an all black rice is what it is. And you probably couldn't tell, but when you make the soup at home, because of the Jubilee rice blend and some of the different types of rice that's in there, it turns the chicken purple. Okay, when the chicken cooks in there, because you cook it all together, it turns the chicken purple. She did that black with the letter J rice. She said the chicken looked rotten. She said it was not a pretty sight. I would not do that one. But I like the wild rice blend. I really like that one. And the Jubilee blend is really good too. So any of those would work. All right, so I've got my buttermilk, my oil, my honey, my egg. These are your basic, this is the basic ingredients in the basic muffin recipe. Lord, we just pray that you would take away this weather. All right, so now we've got our basic ingredients here. And now we're going to add all of the yummy fun stuff. The first one being cheese, my personal favorite ingredient in anything. A couple of years ago, I went on a mission trip to Germany, and that's where our family, the Becker family, is from. Several generations back, they came from Germany, and boy, did I love my German roots when it came to eating all that yummy food. I decided I could definitely stay there and live. And you know, it wasn't like it was anything special. That was the weird thing. It wasn't, you know, I bet if you go to France and all the pastries and things that you don't get here, that would be incredible and that would be amazing. But it was it was the simple stuff, the potato soup and just the fresh cheese, and it was because it was fresh off the farm and everything was just really, really, really yummy. So I'm just going to use my little box grater here. I used our yogurt cultured, just our plain yogurt cheese that we carry. I like it. It's very, very creamy, and so I just really like the texture of it. It's what I use in place of I use it in place of mozzarella in my pizza and for my pizza and stuff like that. All right. All right, now for the really cool part. I'm gonna grab my corn from over here, and these are just fresh ears of corn. And I'm going to use our corn stripper. We carry this. My sister Abby actually was like, oh my gosh, it's the coolest thing ever. Take off the lid here. You can use raw corn. You can use cooked corn. Either one. You just push that ear down in there. The lid goes here. Sometimes to get it started, you gotta twist it. Especially when it's raw. I find you have to kind of twist it down. But Abby said that when corn is in season, she will just strip a whole bunch, put them in baggies, and throw them in the freezer. Now it's all the way down. And then goes the corn. So we're going to do one more real quick. It's the simple things. It's the little things in life. All right. We're actually going to use this again in a minute. All right, and now we're just going to mix this up. Yes, ma'am. Would you blanch it? I wouldn't. I like to just put it right in just like that, and then I cook it down however I want to. So you don't have to blanch it before you put it in the freezer. You certainly can if you want to. If anything, I would pyramid stack my corn in my pressure cooker and pressure it for 4 minutes, and then it's done. Then strip them and put them in a bag. Corn in the pressure cooker is really easy and really fast. Okay. How much water would I put in? Just enough water to cover the bottom. Put the trivet in the bottom of the pressure cooker and then pyramid stack the corn in there. You can even lay some of the husk down in the bottom to add some flavor. Put a little salt in the bottom of the pressure cooker and then just cook them that way. And it's about 4 to 6 minutes is all it takes. Did I use buttermilk in the recipe? I did. The basic muffin recipe calls for a cup of buttermilk, and so that's what I used. Okay. Now you could certainly do the muffin pan here, or you could do the mini muffin pan and scoop it with that little cookie scoop. This is another one of our USA pans. It's the 8 well mini loaf pan. I love it for this in particular because it makes these little these little corn loaves that I really like. I also like, I believe it's the all-in-one pan. I believe it's a 6 well little mini cake pan, little rounds. I also like that a lot for this corn muffin recipe because then it makes little round oat cake. I want to keep calling them oat cakes, corn cakes. I don't know why I've got oats on the brain today. They are the equivalent of 2 regular standard muffins, actually. And the basic muffin recipe makes 12 standard muffins. Now, because we added the cheese and the whole kernel corn, it's made a little bit more batter. But that's okay, because these are going to be nice and big and yummy. And what we're going to do is, when they're done, how the ladies are going to serve it, and this is why I did it this way, is because then you can slice them in nice little wedges and put it on the bottom of the chicken corn chowder soup. Okay, so those are those, and we're just going to pop these in the oven for 20 minutes to bake at 400. A lot of times with that fresh or even fresh frozen corn, you'll notice that it might have to bake just a little bit longer because of that added moisture that you've added to the recipe. So just kind of watch it, 20 to 25 minutes. There again, depending on your oven. All right, so now let's go back to the chicken corn chowder. This recipe is actually my sister Abby's recipe. I don't remember which restaurant they went to and had a chicken corn chowder, and she said, surely I can figure out, which side do I want to do this on? She said, surely I can figure out how to make this recipe myself. And so she played around with it, made it a couple of times, and sure enough, she figured it out. This is the 6-liter pressure cooker. I'm going to walk down front just for a second because I want to show you a couple of pressure cookers that are my favorites. I love the Fissler line of pressure cookers, and you're going to see Mom and I use these a lot in our classes. I own personally 4 pressure cookers at home, and I use them all the time. This particular set, and the reason why I put it out today, this is our large Quattro set. We actually carry 2 different sized Quattro sets. We have the small Quattro set and we have the large Quattro set. I put the large out because of the size of soups that we're going to do. If you were going to do a full recipe, you're going to need the larger pressure cookers. If you cut these recipes in half and there's only 2 of you or just 1 of you at home, then the smaller Quattro set would be fine. What the Quattro set comes with, it comes with a stock pot, and then it comes with what they call I believe, do they call it a brazier? Is that what they call it? A skillet, that's what it is. A skillet and a stock pot, okay? The stock pot is obviously, it's taller. That's what makes it a stock pot. And then the skillet is it's shorter, and so that you can saute things in it and do smaller batches of things, okay? I like to think of the skillet sometimes as my side dish pot. It's what I would do my rice and my beans in, or my a whole bunch of vegetables or something like that, okay? The large Quattro set comes with the 8-liter stock pot and the 4-liter, not 4.5, it's 4-liter skillet, okay? It comes with 1 pressure lid. The pressure lid fits both pots. They have the same diameter opening. So the pressure lid fits both pots. It also comes with a glass lid, and then it comes with the standard trivet and steamer basket and things like that. So, but it comes with the 1 pressure lid. The smaller Quattro set comes with the 6-liter stock pot that I've got up here and a 2.5-liter skillet. You'll notice that the skillet actually has this waffled texture to the bottom. Can y'all see that back there? That's so that you can braise things without oil, and you can braise meats and things like that before you pressure cook them, and that's what that's for. But I love these pots a lot. It's one of those things where even though there's only 1 pressure lid, I mean, you're seeing pressure cooking is very fast. So what I typically do, if I had something like this, and this is what I was going to start with, I would do my longer cooking portion of the meal first, bring the pressure down. You saw once I brought the pressure down on that soup, it was still boiling in there. It cooks very hot. So you can take the pressure down, take the pressure lid off, put the glass lid on it. It'll stay perfectly hot while you cook your shorter cooking side dish, your rice, your vegetables, or whatever. So it's a great place if you are just starting with pressure cooking. The Quattro sets are a great place to start. And it's much more inexpensive than buying 2 full pressure cookers with lids. And you can actually order the lids by themselves later on without ordering a pot. So if you have this set and you go, you know what, a year down the road, I'm ready to be able to cook things at the same time, so I want another pressure lid, we can order that pressure lid that fits your skillet. Yes? Certain ones, I mean, they make, like this 6-liter stock pot is not nearly as big around as the 8-liter. So there, I believe there's 2 different size lids. There's like a 22 centimeter lid and a 26 centimeter lid. Those are the only 2 different size diameters that they sell. So you can get those lids by them, the pressure lids by themselves, okay? All right, let's start on our chicken corn chowder. One thing that I've learned with pressure cooking, obviously, it's not going to start building pressure until the liquids are really boiling and get good and hot. So one thing is to go ahead and get your liquids getting hot while you're prepping your vegetables, while you're doing all of that. And that way, by the time you lock that lid, it'll come up to pressure a lot faster. If you try to start with cold water and put the lid right on, it may take 15 minutes for it to finally come up to pressure. Whereas if you would let it start getting hot while you're prepping all of your ingredients, then you'll be good to go. What's that? I'm using chicken broth here. I'm using the Imagine Free Range Organic Chicken Broth is what I'm using here. And I'm trying to think, yes. I decided to double this recipe, just so we would have enough. Let me get my chicken out of the refrigerator because I've got it already cut. One thing about chicken, obviously it will cook faster if you cut it in smaller pieces. And because I'm gonna end up shredding this anyway after the fact, I went ahead and just cut my chicken breasts into chunks just to make it a little easier. Also, when you're dealing with cold, refrigerated meats and things like that, then go ahead and getting them in the liquid to start getting warm in the very beginning really helps. Now, if you wanted to make your own broth, you could certainly do that, and a pressure cooker makes that very, very nice. If you want to draw the flavor out of the chicken, start with cold water and put your chicken in and your vegetables and your seasonings and whatever else you're going to put in there. But if you start with cold water and bring it all up together, then it'll draw that natural flavor out of the chicken, which is what you're going for if you're wanting to make your own chicken broth. There again, that's the pressure cooking class, or I think it's called Cooking Under Pressure. Is a great class to watch and a wonderful handout for doing the beginning and the basics of pressure cooking, okay? So we've got our chicken and our broth here, and we're gonna get it boiling, and we're gonna let it cook for about 7 minutes once I put the lid on. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my veggies ready. And I should have had this getting hot the whole time I was talking to you about pressure cookers. I didn't think that through very well, did I? That's what happens when you do a class for the very first time. This is our veggie chop. I love this. This is actually how I let my kids chop vegetables for me. This is also a great way if you need to hide vegetables in food and you need to very, very finely chop them. This is fantastic. So there's my very finely chopped onion. Does a great job on doing like 2 or 3 bananas and mashing your bananas for you. It'll do apples. You can put chunks of chicken in there, you know, for a small amount. I like to take this camping with us. It's really nice to chop all the vegetables and it's all contained instead of vegetables falling, you know, kind of all over the place. Also there again, it's a great way to get your kids in the kitchen with you without handing over, oh, here's a sharp knife and a cutting board. Have fun with that. Next thing you know, my boys would be playing ninja, running through the house with a knife. I can just see it. My boys are 7 and almost 6. So they play ninjas all the time. And then I hear someone cry, he kicked me. I'm like, you're playing ninjas, really? You're shocked that he kicked you? Anybody else have boys? You know what I'm talking about, don't you? My son, my 7-year-old, he lost a tooth last spring, and it has still not come in because it was just barely loose last spring, and they were playing ninjas, and he decided to take his shirt off because you can only play ninjas properly if you're shirtless, apparently. I learned these things, you know. And so what they did, he took his shirt off, and next thing I know, he comes screaming into the room, blood pouring out of his mouth. And I said, what in the world happened? And he's like, he yanked my tooth out. And I'm like, okay, first of all, how does your younger brother grab a hold of your tooth and yank it out of your mouth? And ends up, the older one took his shirt off and put his shirt in his mouth and bit down hard on it, and then was shaking the shirt in the younger one's face. So naturally, the younger one reached up, grabbed the shirt, yanked it out of his mouth, and out came the tooth right along with it. So my daughter was in the process of writing a how-to paper, so she decided to write it on how to lose a tooth. So that's what happens when you homeschool. You just got to use all of life's little experiences. All right, my broth is definitely, it's starting to bubble over here, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a stir. One thing that we learned is if you're having trouble with your pressure cooker coming up to pressure initially, wait until your liquid is really hot and almost boiling before you put the lid on. That will help. And right before you put the lid on, give it a stir to kind of agitate the liquid in there. And that will help to bring it up to pressure a little bit faster. The nice thing about this new VitaQuick line of pressure cookers, the old Fissler pressure cookers had a little button on them that when you closed the lid, you had to remember to lock the lid in place so that it would start building pressure. And Mom and I did it all the time in classes. We would be talking, we would forget to lock it. It wouldn't build pressure, but now you've got this sealed pot on high heat, and soon you're burning your food, especially what's on the bottom of the pot, okay? Because you would forget. Does anybody have the old Fisslers, and have you ever forgotten to lock the lid, okay? So They came out with this new Vita Quick line. They kind of streamlined the pots. They made them a little bit more narrow at the bottom. But now you can stack the pots. They all nest inside of each other, even the same size pots. So a 6 liter and a 6 liter will actually nest together because of the new shape. The other thing that they improved was the lid and the handle, so that when you close it, it locks. And there's a little green indicator here so that you know that it's locked into place. And then, like earlier, the way that you release the pressure is by pushing the button until you can unlock it and take it off. Okay, so I'm going to give this a quick stir. I'm going to lock that. You always bring your pressure up. You always bring your pot up to pressure on high heat. Then what you're going to do is, once it's up to pressure, and you'll notice this little button here, once it starts building pressure, this little valve here will pop up, and there's 2 white rings on it. I know the Kuhn-Rikon line of pressure cookers has red rings, so now we don't call them red or white anymore. We just say first ring or second ring, to let you know. That first ring is about 8 pounds of pressure. That second ring is somewhere between 12 and 15. I can never remember which one it is, but it's around 12 or 15 pounds of pressure. So that's what you cook most foods at, is that second ring. They have taken these pots up to like 200 pounds of pressure, and they have not exploded. They've got several safety release features around the lid that it will start releasing and spewing steam here. It will start releasing it here. You see this little hole here on the lid? It's got several places that it will start releasing steam so that it does not just continue building and building and building. Okay, you're not going to have a Lucy and Ethel moment with chicken on the ceiling. Okay, so that's the really nice. These really are very, very safe. What's also nice is, though you bring them up to pressure on high, once they're up to pressure and they're cooking, you reduce the heat. And your stove, everybody's stove is different, but you're going to reduce it just enough to maintain that pressure. You don't want it to build any higher. You don't want to drop it any lower. I think my oven, I can actually turn on my stove, and I've got the glass, the flat glass top. I can turn it all the way to low, and it will maintain the pressure. So it's a great use of energy. You're not using, a lot of energy to cook. It's not putting a lot of heat out in your kitchen. Mom actually first was introduced to pressure cookers by another distributor of the grain mills out in Arizona, and she sells tons of pressure cookers. Can you imagine out in Phoenix? It's 100 and something degrees every day. It doesn't put off a lot of heat in your kitchen, which is really, really nice. And then of course it also cuts down a lot on your cook time as well. Yes? Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Right. I actually have the 2.5 liter. Now my family is a smaller family, and my kids are still young. They're getting to the point where they eat more than I do. All 3 of them ate a larger serving of pot pie last night than I did. So we're getting to the point where I won't use that size as much, but it'll hold like 4 chicken breasts, and I'll do barbecue chicken breasts in there. It will do a couple pounds of green beans really quick, and so I'll do something like that, or I'll do my rice in that pot, just a pot of plain rice and black-eyed peas, and I do stuff like that in that smaller size all the time. And in the beginning, when it was just me and my husband, that 2.5 liter I used a lot for meatloaf, for my barbecue chicken breast, because it was just the 2 of us. Now it really has become my side dish pot, and I do my main dish or my meat dish or my soup or whatever in my larger pot. Does that help? Okay. Do you see how there's steam coming out? It's starting to boil in there. And what's going to happen is, as it starts to steam up, there's a little valve underneath here that, as it builds pressure, that little valve will seal, and then the pressure will start building. So you're going to see steam come out, and then all of a sudden it's going to seal up. The steam is going to stop. Did you see that? It stopped coming out, and now this little valve is going to start popping up with the pressure. And that's how you know that it's about to start coming up. And now it's locked. And now if I push that button, it's going to start releasing steam and releasing pressure. Okay? I'm going to get a bowl, and we're just going to keep getting the rest of our ingredients ready. So I'm just going to keep doing my corn here. Any other questions as we go along? Did y'all enjoy, I haven't even asked you, you've now eaten a couple of things. Did you enjoy the 16 bean soup? Could you imagine no soaking, no pre-soak, no soaking overnight, and 1 hour I cooked that? Really, really good. And did you enjoy the roasted vegetables? Could you tell the flavor difference just by adding those? Were you able to pick out any particular vegetable as your favorite roasted vegetable? What'd you like? They were all good? The sweet potato? Mm-hmm. That was really good. Will you come check the cornbread for me? Well, that one's just fighting with me. If you'll just pull it out and let me just feel it. Oh yeah, few more minutes. Yeah, about 3 minutes. Try that. Can y'all see? Y'all might not be able to see. Jim might be able to zoom in with the camera, but can you see the one white ring has already shown up? And now we're just waiting for that second one. On a gas stove, does anybody have a gas stove? If you have a gas stove, it's going to respond it's going to respond instantly to you turning the heat down. So you're going to wait for that second ring to pop up, and then you're going to turn your heat down, which I could do now. And I'm going to set, these are really nice, these induction burners, because they have a timer on them. So I can set the timer, and then when the timer runs out, it turns itself off. So that's very nice to have. But on a electric stove, it takes a little bit longer for it to respond to you changing the temperature and the heat on there. What you're going to do is, as soon as you see that that first ring on the valve, then you're going to turn your heat down then. And it'll take a few minutes for it to respond to you, so the pressure will continue to build, but then it won't go over. You're not waiting for it to reach the top and then trying to turn your heat down. So on a gas stove, you wait till the second ring appears and then reduce the heat. On an electric or a glass top, you're going to wait for that first ring, and then you're going to lower your heat. All right. All right, so we've got our ingredients here. Let me go ahead and talk you through the rest of this recipe really quick. What we're going to do is we're going to finish cooking our chicken for 7 minutes. While it's cooking, you certainly, and that I wrote white cooking. While cooking, chop the celery and the onions, remove the corn from the ears, and then you can put it all in a bowl together, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to, after the chicken's done, we're going to release the pressure using either the quick release, which is pushing the button, or the cold water release, which is putting it in the sink and running cold water over the edge. And we're just going to take our chicken out and put it in a bowl on the side so that we can shred it. And while we wait for our chicken to cool for a few minutes, I'm going to add my vegetables into my broth. I'm going to relock the lid, and you're going to see just how quickly the pressure is going to pop up then, because we just quickly brought it down from pressure. The liquid's going to still be boiling in there, and when I lock that lid back up and put it on high heat, this valve is going to pop up almost instantly. And then we're going to cook our vegetables for just 2 minutes. Now you could certainly put this in at the very beginning with the chicken. I just found that it almost makes the corn and the onion and the celery a little on the mushy side. And I still want it to be a little bit firm and a little bit more fresh tasting. And since I'm going to shred the chicken anyway, it's not like I'm waiting for a long time for these vegetables to cook in there. It's really easy to get them cooked for 2 minutes while my chicken cools for a minute and I shred it down. And then after we cook our vegetables for 2 minutes, we're going to release the pressure then, and we're going to whisk, which, man, I made a lot of typos yesterday, didn't I? I did. This is what happens when you wait until the day before to make your handout. This is what happens when you plan cooking classes back to back to back. I'm teaching another class on Saturday. I will not be scheduling them like this again. Friday I did the party foods class. Was anybody in the party class? I think just let them sit for a minute and they'll finish cooking. Will you hold it out underneath so that they can see? There's our corn loaves. Aren't those nice? Thank you. So I did the party class on Friday, which I had never done those recipes in a classroom before. So I didn't know how it was going to flow. I didn't know how long it was going to take, all that good stuff. And then turn around and do this class today that I've never done these recipes in a class-like setting before. And Monday I was at home. I wasn't at work to be prepping and things like that. I was homeschooling on Monday. So yeah, I won't be doing this again. Scheduling classes like this. And then I'm doing the Bread Making 101 class, which is a scaled down version of the Getting Started class on Saturday. So my dad goes, "What were you thinking?" And one of our other employees said, "You're pretending you're Sue is what you're doing, scheduling classes back to back. Mom does this kind of stuff." So you get typos when you type a handout the day before. And I didn't have Pam, who was wonderful. She works in our office and she wasn't here yesterday. She's usually my proofreader. And she catches all of these and makes me look fabulous instead of making me look like I don't know how to spell or type. So you're going to whisk your milk and flour together in a small bowl. And let's talk about the flour for just a few minutes. You're going to use a half a cup of flour as a thickener. You could use soft wheat here, but I love using bean flour as a thickening to thicken soups and things like that. A white bean is not going to lend any flavor to what you're putting it in, so it is great for gravies, for making cream of chicken soup, which if you would like to jot underneath this how to make cream of chicken soup, because if you're like me, you've gotten rid of all the yucky canned things. You're going to shake your head up and down that yes, you've gotten rid of all the yucky canned things out of your pantry. Also for me, my daughter can't have any of those cream of whatever soups because they all have milk in them. Okay, so this is a way to make them completely dairy free and make them so that you know what the ingredients are. So you're going to take 2 cups of broth. We'll say cream of chicken soup. So 2 cups of chicken broth. You're going to bring that just to a boil, and you're going to whisk in 1/3 cup of white bean flour. It can be Great Northern bean, it can be small white navy, it can be baby lima. Any one of those will work. Pinch of salt. You're just going to whisk that flour in till it's smooth, and you're going to reduce the heat so that it simmers for 3 minutes. That would be a finished if you wanted to have cream of chicken soup with some crackers on the side for lunch. That's it, finished. It's hot, it's ready to eat, okay? If you let it completely cool, it will be the consistency of a can of cream of chicken soup. So then you could add that to any of your casseroles, any of your favorite casserole dishes that call for a can of cream of chicken soup. That's all you're going to do. Now you certainly don't have to let it get cool before you add it to your recipe. You're about to cook whatever it is that you're making. So just take it straight from the pot, mix it in with whatever your other ingredients are for your casserole dish or whatever. Same exact proportions if you wanted to make a cream of mushroom soup. You could use vegetable broth or beef broth. Use a white bean flour, mix in some fresh mushrooms and let them cook in while you're simmering for 3 to 5 minutes after you put the flour in, and you've got a great cream of mushroom soup. Okay? All of those 3-minute soup ideas, they are found in our, it's either the Country Bean Cookbook by Rita Bingham or it's the Natural Meals in Minutes by Rita Bingham. It's one of those two both of them are absolutely fabulous cookbooks, especially if you're wanting to start cooking more with beans. I believe it's the Country Bean Cookbook. No, it could be the Natural Meals in Minutes. It's one of those. They're both great books. I'm going to release my pressure here. But she has a wonderful lentil soup that uses that same proportions, 2 cups of chicken broth and 1/3 cup of lentil flour. Oh, it is so good. So good. It's either the Country Bean Cookbook or the Natural Meals in Minutes. And I have a feeling Karen snuck off because I saw her leave. So I have a feeling she snuck off to find out exactly so I can tell you. Though both books added to your cookbook collection, they're both great. And she has a lot of great information in there. But today I did use Great Northern bean flour is what I used. So this does have milk and butter in it, but I did use a bean flour, so there's no wheat or gluten in this recipe. And we're just gonna finish releasing the pressure here. I'm actually just gonna reuse this onion and celery bowl to put my chicken in, and we can shred it. So the next time you see my sister Abby here at the store, if you enjoy this recipe, you can thank her for it. She's the cute blonde that just had a baby that doesn't look like she just had a baby. And we can hate her for it, it's okay. All right. Now we're just gonna scoop our chicken out. We went away, our family went up to the mountains and rented a big cabin up in Ellijay last fall. And when I say our family, I mean like our whole family. Mom, Dad, all of us kids. And I guess I should say, if you're new to Bread Beckers or this is your first class, you may not know about our family. Brad and Sue Becker are 2 of the owners here at Bread Beckers. All right, let me show you this. I'm going to turn this up to high before I forget. I'm going to give this, oh. Okay, I'm going to turn it up to high. I'm going to give this a stir to kind of agitate that liquid in there to get the heat distributed evenly there. I'm going to put our lid on. And we're going to bring that back up to pressure and cook it for 2 minutes. All right, so Brad and Sue Becker are 2 of the owners here at Bread Beckers. They are my parents. I guess I should have told you that at the beginning. I don't think I introduced myself either. I'm Ashley McCord, now that we're halfway through the class. And I am their oldest daughter. This is our little tooth-edged chopper. Love it for shredding chicken. Works great on leftover baked potatoes if you want to make potato salad to chop them all up. Works great here as well. Or fresh frozen fruit if you're going to make a syrup or make a puree with them. This is great. Pop them in the microwave, get them softened, and then shred them up, chop them up. So I'm the oldest of the kids. There are 9 of us all together. 7 biological children, and then my parents adopted 2 teenage boys from a European country called Latvia. It's right outside of Russia. Across the Baltic Sea from Sweden. So I have 2 younger brothers that are adopted from Europe. They adopted them in the last, I guess it's been about 4 years or so that the boys have been here. So there are 9 of us now. 1, 2, 3, 4 of us are married. 4 of us have children. My sister and my sister-in-law both had babies this past winter, one in November, one in December. So I have 3, Josh and Amanda have 1, Caleb has 2, so that's 6. Abby and Chris have 2, so there's 8 grandchildren now. So our entire family rented a, did you see me? Rented a cabin up in LJ, and we were all responsible for one meal. Well, this was my sister Abby's meal, and she made it super fast in the pressure cooker, and we all absolutely fell in love with it. I'm like, you are writing down this recipe for me. Most of the recipes that Abby and I share with each other are saved in my phone as a text message, because that's how we do it. Or she'll write it down on a piece of paper and she'll take a picture of it and send it to me. And so then I have to save them somewhere. But that's how she and I usually communicate as far as recipes go. All right, so there's my chicken. Now here's my bean flour. I'm just gonna whisk it together with my milk. It's the country bean. Okay, we have an answer. The 3-minute little bean soups are in the country bean cookbook. She could have easily put it in the natural meals in minutes, since it only takes about 3 to 5 minutes to make those soups, but it is in the country bean cookbook. The lentil soup it's in that same section. One thing I will tell you, brown gravy for mashed potatoes and meatloaf. What I like to do there is I like to use either the beef broth or the vegetable broth and pinto bean flour. Pinto bean flour actually has a little peppery kind of flavor, and so it makes great brown gravy. Certainly play around with it. The 16 bean, grind that and use that as your bean flour. It works really good as well. All right, it is coming up to pressure now. And we've got our milk and flour mixture. We've got our butter, we've got our chicken ready. We are almost done with that one. I'm gonna get a sip of water really quick. Any questions so far about this? Yes, ma'am. Good question. Her question was, how do I grind the beans? Yes, in the Wonder Mill or the Nutri-Mill. Both of them will do the beans. Now, if it's a larger bean, like a kidney bean, you may have to turn your coarse fine setting all the way to the coarsest. It doesn't actually make a coarse flour at all. You're just opening that opening large enough for that large bean to fall through there. If you have a recipe that calls for chickpea flour, that's garbanzo beans. That's all it is, and you can grind garbanzo beans in your grain mill. Absolutely. The old Magic Mill, like 3+ stainless steel bottom, yes, it'll work just fine. There again, just turn it all the way to the coarsest setting so that it'll fall down in there. And that's it. All right, we are going to throw all of this stuff together here in just a minute. I'm going to wash my hands because I've got sticky on them. Trying to see how we're doing time-wise. Oh, we're doing pretty good. All right, we are up to pressure, so I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes. We're going to let this continue to cook, and then we're going to throw that together. All right, while we are waiting on that, let's go ahead and start working on our next recipe. I do have another burner up here, and I can certainly start working on it. All right, the next recipe in your handout is actually a hot and sour soup. My family absolutely loves Chinese food, and we have our favorite Chinese restaurant that we eat at on Sunday afternoons after church. And I'm gonna move this right here. There we go. We have our favorite little Chinese restaurant that we like to eat at, and they have probably one of the yummiest hot and sour soups. I absolutely love it. I've got my water. I bought dry mushrooms, and so I'm actually going to get them soaking just a little bit so they'll kind of rehydrate for us. I'm just going to set them off to the side. So I actually went searching for a hot and sour soup recipe, and I found a couple online, and I liked certain things about one, liked a few things about another, so I kind of combined what I liked most about the two recipes into one, and then changed a few things up. This one in particular told you how to make a Chinese chicken broth, whereas we know of chicken broth, when we make chicken broth, we do celery, onions, some bay leaves, Italian seasoning maybe, and chicken. Well, this one had you make a Chinese chicken broth, and I actually didn't use chicken at all because I wanted to add beef to my hot and sour soup. Traditional hot and sour soup has pork in it. Our family does not eat pork anymore, just a personal conviction, and so I used beef in this recipe instead. I'm going to get this broth warming over here while I bring this pressure down on our soup because it was done. So what I did was I made the Chinese broth, and I actually made it yesterday, and I took fajita or stir fry strips of beef, and I went ahead and cooked it in the broth so that the broth took on some of that beefy flavor, and then it also made the beef very, very tender. So now it's already cooked, and so now I can just kind of throw the soup together. So I made that Chinese broth. It's at the top with the water. I took an entire bunch of green onions, cut the bottoms, the rooted part off, the little stringy things off, then split them just down the middle. Split them open. Didn't chop them up in little pieces, just split them down the middle. And then I took my garlic cloves and I just smashed them open. I didn't mince them because I wanted to pull all of that out later. I wanted a nice smooth broth at the very end. So I left them in big chunks. Then I took my 3-inch piece of fresh ginger. I peeled it and just kind of smashed it open as well and put that in there. And then I took a whole onion, peeled the paper off of it, cut the ends off, and just cut it in half and put it in there with my beef. And then you'll see for the broth, I cooked it for 15 minutes. I pressure cooked it for 15 minutes in my pressure cooker. And that was it. Then I strained it all out. I separated the beef from the vegetables, and I kept the beef to go in my soup. Now the beef is fully cooked. Now I can add it to my soup, and I just discarded all those vegetables. Then I poured my broth through a fine strainer just to get those whole peppercorns out. And now I had a nice smooth Chinese, more of a Chinese broth because of the ginger and the garlic and the onions versus celery, bay leaves, and that we would normally associate with a chicken broth. You could certainly then put this in ball jars and keep it in the refrigerator for when you're ready to use it, so you could make it ahead of time if you wanted to. All right, we're going to continue to release this pressure, and then by the time we throw all of this together, we'll be ready to throw our ingredients in and serve, because I know they've got the cornbread ready over there. Did we have enough of the cornbread? Good. Do we have enough for me to have a piece later? Awesome. Yes, all right. I know there are so many times where we'll have some late sign-ups and it's too late to modify the recipe or whatever, and guess who doesn't get to eat any of the food? Us. And the guys in the back, you'd think that we had a mutiny on our hands if there's no food, if there's not enough food for everybody that works here to have some. So Karen and Sharon have got everybody taken care of today. And I know that I'm going to finish this class and there's going to be a nice little pile of food hidden away. Yes, hidden away for me. All right. There we go. Now we're just going to give this a stir. No, but I'm sure that they are done. Yes, please. You just make sure I'm doing all this right. I've only made it a couple of times since it was Abby's recipe. Grease pressure, add the flour mixture. Yep, okay, now we're just gonna re-whisk. I have found that letting the milk and the flour just set for a few minutes, set it aside, and then whisk it again, it really helps it to be very, very smooth. And we're just going to bring this to a nice simmer. Add in the butter. Let it melt. Just until it thickens. And I will tell you that Abby's recipe actually called for more butter than this, and I did not feel like it needed it. So, shh, don't tell her that part. And thankfully, she'll never watch this video. So, my siblings are not nearly as impressed with me as they should be. I remind them often that I'm the first and the best. It's what an older sibling is supposed to do, right? And tattle on them. Yes. See, it was role reversal. You know, growing up, they thought that they were all smooth, tattling on me, you know, because I was the oldest. Ashley's not doing what she's supposed to do. She's watching TV. She's reading her book. She was babysitting us and wouldn't play with us. Yeah, all of that, then running to mom and dad and tattling on me, even though I really didn't ever do anything wrong. They just, you know. But payback, see, now that I'm an adult and they're teenagers, or when they were teenagers, yeah. There was a phase, I think, that my nickname was the Rat. Because I'd be like, Mom, I'm pretty sure I'm the one who convinced Mom to get on Facebook just so that she could stalk my siblings. I'm like, hello, have you read what, you know, so-and-so's Facebook status was? Did you see this picture of her speeding ticket that she was obviously very proud of but hadn't told you about yet? Yeah. Yes. That's because Aunt Karen and I, she is by far my favorite aunt, and I tell her that all the time, and she knows that. And we are very, very similar personality-wise, and you would think that we would probably butt heads more than we do, you know, because of us being so much alike. But I think that we don't butt heads because we're on the same page together. If she's upset about something, I'm usually upset about the same thing, so we're good. And but where we are different is that she's one of those youngest children, the baby, who can do no wrong. Yeah, one of those. And she was the only girl in her family. She had only older brothers. Our chicken corn chowder is ready. Would you like to come and get it? I'm not using this lapel mic anymore. Just telling you that right now. Or I'll have a backup plan with a different shirt. That would work too. Okay. All right, I'm gonna wipe this off really quick. This is the cool thing about these induction burners. The heat is only there if there's something magnetic on it. So you can put a piece of paper between it and the pot. It won't catch on fire. There's no flame there. It's only done by magnetism. So it will only work on certain, you know, it won't work on like an aluminum pot, but a stainless steel pot is a perfect conductor of heat. So it works great on those. So one of the reasons I love these burners. All right, so we're just gonna keep getting our, there we go. And get rid of this tray, and we will make our hot and sour soup. And I think we're doing okay time-wise. You guys are doing all right, right? I cannot wait for you guys to try this cornbread and chowder recipe. All right, now, So I walked you through how I made my broth. Here is an instant where I am using the larger Quattro set right here. This is the 8-liter stock pot here, and then this is the 4-liter skillet. And so I'm going to assemble the rest of my ingredients here and stir fry them and then add them into my broth after the fact. All right, so we've got our mushrooms. I'm just going to drain the water off of these. I have used fresh mushrooms. I've made this recipe twice now at home, and I've used fresh and dried. This particular, the particular grocery store that I was shopping at this week did not have the fresh gourmet blend, but I love the gourmet blend of mushrooms. It's got like the porcini and the shiitake and the little button squash. What's the other one that it had? I can't remember now what the other one was that it had in there. So the grocery store that I went to, my local Publix close to my house, had the dry gourmet blend. So that's what this is. So now that I've drained the water off, get a knife, and now I'm just going to give these kind of a rough chop. You could certainly use any kind. If you only like baby portobellos, then just use baby portobellos. You don't have to use the gourmet blend if you don't want to. But I really liked it. Those bigger ones probably need to soak in the water just a little bit longer, so I'm actually just going to leave them out so that we can keep going. And I think I gave you those instructions that if you were using the fresh mushrooms, just skip that whole placing them in boiling water. Just skip that whole portion of the recipe and just go straight to using them. All right, we're going to put a little bit, heat a little oil in our pan here over a medium-high heat. Just enough oil to get us a good saute going. I've got my fresh ginger. These are our piranha peelers. They work great at peeling the skin off of ginger. They have a serrated blade, so it will actually peel the skin off of a peach and even off of a tomato. They are very sharp and really, really nice. This is our fine zester. This actually is the cover so that you can keep it in your drawer and you reach in and you don't cut yourself because it's very, very sharp. But then the cover fits on the back and acts as the catcher for whatever you're grating or zesting or whatever. And then it also has, when you use it not upside down, it has measurements, 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, a tablespoon, so that you can grate and tap it on your counter, and then it will measure whatever it is that you're grating. So I'm just gonna use my zester to finely grate my ginger. I'm gonna turn my oil down just a little bit. The bamboo shoots, I got just the canned bamboo shoots that were sliced, and then what I did is I took those slices and I cut them all in half, or some of the really wide ones I cut in thirds to give it those longer strips, more of a matchstick type size bamboo shoot is what I did. And I've already sliced those and prepped that for you so that we can throw it all together. the chili sauce or the chili paste, and I think I found this in the international aisle with the Asian cooking. It's a sambal olik, fresh ground chili paste. Everything was very easy to find the first time I did this recipe. So nothing was very, there was no weird, super weird ingredients that I had to go to a specialty store to find. Okay. Let me throw my mushrooms in my oil here. There's my mushrooms. Here's my bamboo shoots. There's my ginger. Someone remind me. 1 tablespoon of chili paste. Carefully measured. Now I'm going to get my beef. I'll show you because I went ahead and since I made that, there it is. There's my beef strips that I cooked in my broth yesterday, and then just put them in the refrigerator. Toss that all together. And you just want to infuse that chili paste flavor all throughout. Oh, escapee. We're just going to let that kind of stir fry there for a few minutes. All right, and now we're going to combine our soy sauce and our vinegar and our salt and our pepper and our honey granules all in a bowl. The recipe did call for a pinch of sugar, and I think that's, you could certainly leave it out if you wanted to, but I think that just that little bit of sweetness does cut with the acidity, and it is supposed, hot and sour soup it's sour with a little bit of heat, with a little bit of sweet as well. So I think just that little bit just helps cut that heat just a little bit. All right. So I am doubling this soup recipe to make sure that we have enough. So I'm going to use a cup of soy sauce, and I did use the organic tamari gluten-free soy sauce is what I'm using. So a cup of soy sauce. Doubling this recipe, so I'm going to, helps to open it, the rice vinegar. We're going to do the salt. With something like this, I maybe would not fully double the salt because of the soy sauce is already very salty, and you could certainly salt your soup after the fact if you wanted to. We're just going to do some freshly ground pepper here. We're going to whisk this together. Do you like that save? All with my left hand. All right. And now we're just going to toss this with all of our meat and bamboo shoots and everything. So now we're just going to make sure that this is kind of evenly coated. That meat has started to kind of sear a little bit, which is really nice. It's going to just add a nice flavor. And so I'm just going to work all those little bits, all those brown bits off the bottom of the pan. And what I'm going to do, since I was stir frying all of this here, and my broth is already nice and hot over here, I am just going to, instead of pouring my broth into this pot, since it would never fit, we're just going to add it all over here. I think you could certainly, if you had pot roast left over, you could certainly use that beef instead of going to the trouble of doing the stir fry or the fajita strips. I think that's certainly an option. In fact, one of the hot and sour soup recipes that I found actually had you using barbecued pork that you shred. So you could certainly do that here if you eat pork and you wanted to add that, or if you wanted to do a roast beef. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this to a boil and let it simmer for 10 minutes. Okay. While it does that, we'll get the rest of our ingredients ready. The original recipe actually called for cornstarch. I know I try not to use cornstarch as much as possible, and the reason for that is because corn is one of those grains or food that has been approved to be genetically modified in this country. And it is my personal feeling, this is just my personal opinion on this, is that things that byproducts of corn, corn starch, corn syrup, things like that that are a byproduct of the corn, there is a greater chance of those products being made from genetically modified corn, because they've modified the corn in a way that ensures them that they're going to get a good crop. And so things that need a lot of corn, you know, the amount of cornstarch that we go through in this country and that's made in this country, it would be a very safe assumption that that cornstarch is made from genetically modified corn, and they don't have to tell you that. That's the unfortunate part. They don't have to tell you that it's made from it. There are also, because of that, there are a lot of corn allergies in this country. So I have found that arrowroot powder works great, 1-for-1 in place of cornstarch in baking. So you can certainly do that, and that's what I've got here. Is I've got my arrowroot powder, and then I'm going to mix in my water. I still have some of the water here. It does. Arrowroot powder does work the same as cornstarch. It's a thickener, is what it is, and it works great. One thing I've found with it, you have to treat it just like cornstarch. So dissolve it in your water and then set it aside, and before you add it to your soup as a thickener, stir it again, because it will have started to kind of settle a little bit on you. It's just tap water. I poured water out of my Cloer kettle just because it still had a little bit of warm water in it, and I just find that it dissolves a little, you know, a little bit better with a little bit of warm water. But it doesn't have to be warm water. You can just do straight tap water. Yes. Correct. The corn that we carry here is non-GMO corn. And the wheat as well, yes. All right, so we're just going to set that aside. Okay. While that sits there, we're going to get our tofu ready. Don't cringe. Don't be scared. It's really good. And here, because this is a soy product, there again, soybeans are one of those it just spit at me. It's packed in water, so I'm just going to drain the liquid off. Since tofu is a soybean product, soybeans are the other food that have been allowed to be genetically modified in this country. And so I did get organic tofu, made with organic, non-GMO whole soybeans. And I went ahead and the very first time I made this, I just got the extra firm, the big block of tofu. And then at my local Publix, I found they had it already cubed for me. So I'll show you. They have it already cubed and ready to go, which is what I would do with it if I had bought the whole big block of tofu. I would have sliced it and then cubed it. Yes? Which Publix? It's my local Publix is up near Great Sky in North Cherokee County. I think it's Laurel Canyon, but it's where the organic produce is. There's a little section of, and they usually have like the little the naked smoothies, or the Odwalla juices and smoothies in the juice, where all the orange juice is in the produce section of the grocery store. That's where it was found. The very first time I made this recipe, I went to Kroger and got all my ingredients, and in the refrigerated health food section at Kroger is where they've got the tofu. That's where you can find it. Okay, so we've got our tofu ready, our arrowroot. Now we just need to get our eggs going. And this is also what I'm about to show you with adding the eggs, is how they make egg drop soup. And it's you get the broth, which, you know, if your family likes egg drop, then I don't see why you couldn't make that Chinese chicken broth with the ginger and everything, and then just get that broth boiling. And the technique is you get it stirred, you start moving that broth in one direction, get it going, remove the spoon while it's still spinning in that direction. You ladle in, or you gently pour in your beaten eggs, and the eggs cook instantly in the boiling broth. And that's how you would make an egg drop soup. That's that easy. All right, we'll get this ready. Will you grab a towel and just get this tofu spit juice? Should have known better than to be holding on tightly to the bottom of the tofu container while I opened it, because of all of that is packed in water. Thank you so much. Does it help you to see that I'm just a real person and that sometimes I'm a total klutz in the kitchen? I assure you, I am very normal. All right, we're just going to turn our heat down just a little bit. I gave this another good stir, and now I'm just going to mix that in to my soup. I'll let that continue to simmer and thicken up. I'm going to add the tofu. We're going to let this simmer and cook for 3 minutes, and then we'll add in our egg mixture. All right, let me clear a spot here, and we will get going on our next recipe. The last recipe that I'm gonna do for you, and I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm gonna totally botch how to say this. Anybody Greek? Anybody know how to properly pronounce this? I even looked it up. I Googled it on the dictionary so I could see what the pronunciation was for it. It's avgolimeno soup with corn grits dumplings. Okay, this is actually taken from one of the new cookbooks that we're carrying, and it's right here out in the front. It's called Grain Mains. I featured one of the recipes out of there in the party class. It was a Reuben salad. Very, very yummy, very tasty. Great cookbook. We're going to be featuring a lot more recipes out of that cookbook that I think you're really going to enjoy. The two guys that wrote the book, they had, the way I understand it, they had some health problems, and they realized that it was food related, which most of the time it is in this country, and they realized that grains, whole grains, had become the side dishes in this country, and they needed to be the main dishes in this country, which goes right along with what Mom teaches: whole grains every day, every way, every meal, any way you can get it. And so they have just a lot of good recipes, and they're not all boil the grains and add it to a salad. I kind of get tired of, you know, a lot of times recipes and cookbooks of eating whole grains, it's boil it and cook it and then add it in with fruits and salad, and there's your whole grains. I get tired of eating things that way. But they have a lot of really, really good stuff. They've got some hamburgers that are meatless that use grains and beans instead. So I'm anxious to try some of those recipes. I think they're going to be really, really good. And then this was one recipe that my family actually really, really enjoyed. We're going to mix up our dumplings first because they have to sit. Get this stuff out of the way. And I used, here again, I used the white corn, the white popcorn, and soft wheat for my dumplings. Now in the cookbook, they have you grinding the corn into grits and making a very coarse ground. They said the finer, sorry I have an itch on my nose that I'm going to use the towel with, not my finger. They say that the finer the meal that you make, the firmer the dumpling ends up being. And because I'm cooking it in the soup, I do want it to stay firm. And so instead of making grits and making a coarse meal, I just ran it along with my soft wheat through my grain mill and made it more like a corn flour. Okay? So I've got my cornmeal and I've got my soft white wheat flour here, and now I've got my dry ingredients, my baking powder, my salt. Now it called for mustard powder, and I did not have any mustard powder, and I do this at home all the time. I don't typically have mustard powder at home, and so I just use mustard out of the refrigerator, Grey Poupon, a brown spicy, regular yellow mustard, whatever. And I don't find that it makes that big of a difference, to be totally honest with you. So if that's all you got, go for it, okay? So there's all my dry ingredients, and now we're gonna add our eggs and our oil, and I'll add my, since I'm using prepared mustard, I will add it in with my liquid stuff. Now, one thing I noticed at home when I made this, and I am doubling this recipe, so I'm going to use 2 eggs anyway, but what I noticed at home was that it was not enough egg in there at all. And you know what the texture needs to be like to be able to hold together, for it to be almost like a biscuit. You want it to be a biscuit consistency and not too loose that it doesn't hold together, because if it doesn't hold together here, it's certainly not going to hold together when you drop it into a soup and boil it, okay? So it is also going to just depend on what size egg you use. If you use jumbo eggs, then it may only take 1, and that might have been what they were using. If you use just a standard egg, it's probably going to take more. So I went ahead and I gave you that instruction as well. I also find that when mixing something like this together, like a biscuit dough, you use a whisk on your dry ingredients, But then after that, to actually mix the liquids in, don't use a whisk, because the whisk actually separates the batter, and you're not going to be able to see if it's coming together or not, because the whisk is just going to tear it all apart. It's going to make it crumbly. Does that make sense? And you're not going to be able to see if it's the right texture or not. And I can go ahead and tell you that this is too dry. So we're going to add a couple more eggs. And as soon as I get this added in, we're going to add our eggs to our hot and sour soup, and then the girls will be able to serve that. The ladies, excuse me. I said that to two of my friends that sing in choir with me at church. I passed them in the hall on Sunday and I said, "Hey girls," and one of them said, "I will take that compliment." She said, "I get called ma'am and lady." She said, "It just makes me feel old. So I will take that as a compliment." I said, "Alrighty then." All right, so we're just going to continue to mix this together. This is a traditional Greek soup. All right, here we go. Are y'all ready? We're going to turn the heat off so that it's not, boiling, so that now I can Is this kind of like patting your tummy and rubbing your head, or the opposite? There we go. And that's it. That smells really good. All right, that one is ready for you. I've certainly gone through my fair share of dishes today, I tell you what. Have y'all seen this over here? All right, so now we've got our dumpling dough mixture. All right, now what it says is you're just going to shape these into small rounds and put them on a plate, cover them with saran wrap, and put them in the refrigerator. These are the brand new little cookie scoops that we are carrying, and they are perfect for making little dumplings. My husband actually preferred me to break up the dumplings in the soup to make sure that he had a little piece of dumpling in every bite that he took. So if they don't hold their shape, because today they're a little wet, but it's because of all the rain outside. They're a little bit wetter than I would normally like them to be. So if they don't hold their shape, it's probably going to make the soup taste even better, because you're going to have a little bit of this corn dumpling in every single bite of soup. And what's great about this is you can make these, you can put them in the refrigerator for at least 20 minutes up to an hour. So you could certainly make these, and I don't see any reason why you couldn't let them go for 2 hours, to be honest with you. You could make, okay, what's an hour to two? It's just sitting in the refrigerator. You could make these certainly ahead of time and then throw the soup together, when you're ready to eat dinner. This is actually a soup that is actually very, very good 2 and 3 days later. Now, I will tell you, if you do not care for lemon or you don't care for dill, you are probably not going to like this soup recipe, Avgolimeno soup is a traditional Greek. It's an egg and lemon broth. There is no dairy whatsoever in this recipe. So if you do have a milk allergy, this is completely dairy-free, which is one of the other reasons why I wanted to try it. I wanted to see if my own daughter would like it. And you know what I forgot to add? The mustard. I don't think it's going to matter, to be totally honest with you. We're going to pretend like it won't. And you guys are going to like it anyway. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to treat you like my kids. I had a customer walk up to me after one of the last classes and say, how in the world do you get your kids to eat half the things that I hear you talk about them eating in class? I mean, roasted vegetables and soup with kale, you know. Yeah, I think part of it is I think sometimes we raise picky eaters. Does that make sense? I mean, there are some things, yeah, there are some things that you're just, I mean, there are some foods you're just not going to like. And there are some textures, everybody's different, that you're just not going to like. But I think one thing that I know has helped my children is letting them help me cook in the kitchen. When they are adding the ingredients, they are much more likely to eat it. I use words like secret ingredient a lot when they were younger. This is the secret ingredient. You tell that to a couple of little boys that are ninja spies anyway, you know, they're all about that. I'm just going to stick these in the fridge while we put the rest of our soup together. Some of you are eating the hot and sour soup. How is it? It's a little different, right? It's a little different. Okay, let's see. I am running out of spots. Okay. We're going to get the rest of our stuff together here. But I think sometimes we do. We teach our kids to be picky eaters. But definitely getting them in the kitchen, I think, really helps. Are we in? Yeah, we are in. Okay. You were born a picky eater? You're right, right? Yes, and you know what? I used to tell my mom when I was in 9th grade biology and I learned that your taste buds die as you get older. I told her that's why she liked food that I didn't. That it's because her taste buds were dying and she couldn't really taste how bad they really tasted. It didn't work. I still had to eat them. I mean, there are certainly things. I do not like green beans to this day. I try them like once every couple of months because my family loves them. And so I'll try it and my husband's like, why are you eating green beans? I'm like, I'm just trying. I'm just trying it. I'm going to continue to try. If I make my kids try things, I think it's only fair that I retry things. To this day, I still don't like green beans. But I'll keep trying. Maybe one of these days my taste buds will be dead enough that they'll taste good. I don't know. There are a few things that I find funny, like for instance, I use only the real salt. The real salt does not have added iodine in it. I actually find myself every once in a while craving mushrooms. Mushrooms are full of iodine. And I think it's just my body's natural response of, hey, we need a little bit of iodine. Let's have some mushrooms tonight, you know? And then I'm good. Because we don't need to be adding iodine, for one, to our salt. It has trace amounts in the real salt, but it's one of those things where we're low in iodine because we're not eating real food, and so they found something that they can add it to get it into our diet. Does that make sense? So, all right, we've made our dumplings and we've set them aside. So now we've got our olive oil, and it's actually a good bit for the base of our soup. Yes, other countries, you're right, they do not have children's menus, you know, and I'm going to tell you something about my parents, and you may think, oh my gosh, your parents are so mean, but we had a 2-bite rule, at our house. You had to at least try it. You know, growing up, even I would try the green beans every once in a while, and it finally got to where Mom said, okay, you really don't care for green beans, you don't have to eat them anymore. And she usually would have another, because we had we lived in a very traditional Southern home. There was more than one vegetable on the table, you know, and so I would just eat the other. And I really like spinach and I really like broccoli, so it's not like I am opposed to green vegetables. I just don't care for green beans. So we had a 2-bite rule, but growing up, it was, if you turned your nose up to dinner, you may not be made to eat it for dinner, but there was a very good chance that that was what you were having for breakfast the next morning. So it was better to just go ahead and eat it and get it out of the way, so that then at least you got grits and pancakes and eggs for breakfast with everybody else. But to be honest with you, there was not much that Mom made that we didn't eat, that we didn't enjoy. So definitely get your kids in the kitchen. I've said it many, many times. If they're struggling with math and fractions, get them in the kitchen cooking. Fractions make a whole lot more sense when you're talking cups, half cups, quarter cups, third cups, 2/3 of a cup, tablespoons and teaspoons. Makes a whole lot more sense. All right, so for the soup, we're heating our large pot, and we're gonna add our onions, and we're gonna cook slowly, stirring once in a while until they're soft and golden. While these cook, and this is not a pressure cooker soup recipe. You'll notice this is just, we're doing this just in our pot, okay? We have got fresh kale here. I have got fresh kale that I'm going to chop up, and we're going to add this to our soup. Hey Sharon, will you grab me all my knives? All my good knives are in the kitchen getting washed. And I got a hold of some dust, and it's now making my nose itch. All these things that you have to think about when you're making everybody else's food. Don't touch your hair, don't touch your nose, don't touch your face, don't touch your mouth. Though my mom tells a story of, she was I think it was in Chicago one year at the Housewares show, and she was watching Paula Deen do a cooking demonstration, and I don't know if it was live or it might have been on her show, but she was watching Paula Deen cook, and Paula put her tasting spoon in and tasted the food and was like, oh, that's good, and put it right back in the pot. And Mom went, if Paula Deen can do it, then itching my nose blunder is every once in a while. But she just cracked up laughing at that. I'll take that. Get the pink one. I will in a bit. I will in a bit. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do is I took one whole bunch of kale. Here again, and I'll tell you that most of this class was purchased in the produce section at Publix. I found just about all of my vegetables, all of my greens, my tofu, everything, that in the international aisle. And that's about the only places that I went. So I'm just going to kind of give this, you know, if I was serving this at home, I would probably give it a much rougher chop, to be honest with you. But because I want to make sure in our little serving cups everybody gets a taste of kale, then I'm gonna chop it a little finer than I normally would. Does that make sense? You just have to think about these things when you're serving to a large crowd like this. But I had Maggie wash my kale before the class. So she washed it and then just de-stemmed it, just pulled it away from the stem. I'll give you a little blurb about kale. We're gonna be using it again in an upcoming class if you're not already registered for this class. My other favorite cookbook that we carry here is called the Shamrock and Peach. It's a traditional Irish cookbook fused with Southern food and traditions. We have such a large Irish immigrant population that came here to the South that you'll start noticing that there are a lot of traditional Southern dishes that are traditional Irish dishes as well. Especially with the way we cooked at our house, because my mom was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, which is a very large Irish population. I think it's St. Patrick's Day in Savannah. The kids are out of school on St. Patrick's Day. Mom thought that it was like a national holiday. And she went off to college at the University of Georgia, and it rolled around that she had class on St. Patrick's Day, and she was like, what? Why don't we have class? And everybody's looking at her like, are you kidding me? Really? But it's a big deal down in Savannah. But the author of the Shamrock and Peach, she lives right here in the Alpharetta Roswell area. She is coming, and we are going to do a Irish Southern food fusion St. Patrick's Day class. And we are going to be making corned beef and curly kale, because what we say is cabbage here is not exactly what their cabbage is over there. They use whatever leafy green they can get their hand on. And so we're going to be making a potato and kale with a creamy kale sauce to go with our brisket, our corned beef, which is already brining, by the way. It will have brined for 6 weeks by the time we eat it. I have already purchased it, and it is brining away in the refrigerator as we speak. Did anybody come to that class last year that Judith and I did? Yes, I made a huge boo-boo and did not read the instructions to the recipe for the corned beef. I just read the list of ingredients that I needed to get a hold of. And so in the ingredients, it said that I needed so many pounds of brisket. So I bought my brisket. So she gets here the day before the class, and we go to start prepping all of the recipes, and she said, where is the brisket? And I said, there it is. And there it was, sitting on the counter in its package from the grocery store. And she's like, oh, yeah, the very first step in the recipe is to brine the brisket for 6 weeks. And I was like, that would have been a good point to read. Would have been a good idea. So I planned ahead this time. We ended up brining it overnight, and I don't know if you remember how yummy. Oh, the mother tea. Yes, the mother-daughter tea that she and I did. We ended up brining it overnight, and then we actually pressure cooked the brisket in some of the brining liquid so it would infuse all that flavor. And she said she might have just been being nice, but she said that it was the best tasting 24-hour brined brisket she had ever had. But she could have just been being nice. We'll never know, because she's very sweet. But it's gonna be done right this time around. We're doing the same brisket and potatoes, but we are doing some other recipes. We're gonna do a white chocolate and Irish butter bread pudding with a custard sauce, and we're gonna be doing a recipe that is not in her cookbook. It's a family favorite, and she said it's going in her next cookbook, and it's a blue cheese souffle. I'm very excited about those. So, and then the souffle you actually serve over salad greens with a turkey bacon vinaigrette. So I'm excited. So y'all sign up for that class. Okay, so we've got our pot with our onions are all cooked down. And now we're gonna stir in our kale. Oh, that's thunder. I thought I was, oh, I'm messing up something. Ooh. The power cannot go out before we do the crostinis. Okay. All right, we're just gonna cook down our kale. Huh. I did forget the broth. Karen, will you come grab the cookbook? Page 140. The grain mains. I was like, what is the liquid that goes in this? I'm looking around going, and it's the broth.
8 cups of chicken broth.
Okay, 8 cups of chicken broth. Will you grab me 3 packages? Because I 1.5 this recipe. Chicken broth, 8 cups of chicken broth. One thing I love about kale is it's one of those greens that even once it's cooked, it stays so bright green. I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. Which, this is again, you know, Southerners eat greens. Well, so do the Irish. They eat a lot of greens, and that's where that comes from. The broth is not typed on the handout. No, I totally left it off. So 8 cups of chicken broth. So we're going to add this. You. All right. All right. They've changed the new siren system. It's not the woo. And now we've got crickets. All right, now we're going to bring this up to a boil. Once we bring it up to a boil, we're going to reduce the heat and we're going to drop our dumplings in, and we're going to cover them and let them simmer and cook for 20 minutes. Okay, while we wait for that to come up to a boil, okay, while we wait for that, I want to talk about the crostini. So flip over to the next page really quick because I want the girls to go ahead and start being able to make these for you. Uh-huh. A full, yes, a full, and I actually typed that right out from their directions. But yes, a full boil, and then you're going to take it back down to low, the barest bubble, and you're going to drop your dumplings in, cover, and let them cook for 20 minutes. Well, there goes the real siren. Now I can hear it. All right. All right, so while we wait for that, over on the crostini page, now would be an appropriate time. I'm ready to meet the Lord, are you? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Because you'll meet him one way or another. It's a matter of if you stay there or not. What I've made ahead of time is I've made a batch of baguette loaves. I took that same basic dough recipe earlier that I used to make the little rolls. And I used my our 3-channel baguette pan, and I just divided that basic dough recipe into thirds, made them into nice long ropes, set them on my baguette pan, let them rise, and then baked them in the oven 400 for 20 minutes. Then what I did was I took that loaf of bread. In fact, will you bring me the loaf from over there, Sharon? This is one of them left over still. There they are. See about how big the rounds are? Now you're just going to slice them, little 1/2 inch width, okay, and make all these little rounds. And then I went ahead and prepared yesterday the cheese spread portion of this recipe. Is equal parts mayonnaise and the finely shredded Parmesan cheese. That's all it is, mixed together. You can mix this up weeks in advance and keep it in the refrigerator. In fact, I did the entire package of Parmesan cheese, which was 1.5 cups and 1.5 cups of mayonnaise, because I knew that whatever you guys didn't eat, we were going to consume. In fact, I decided to add this recipe yesterday because I did them in the party class. They're the perfect little appetizer for parties. They're fantastic. They're also great with a bowl of soup. And I decided yesterday to add it mostly because I wanted to eat them today for lunch. And then the other reason was I thought it would be absolutely beautiful next to this soup because of the yellow lemony broth and the green, bright green kale, and then the beautiful red tomatoes. It's just going to be an absolutely gorgeous plate together. And I'm trying to think more pretty. Most of the time my food tastes amazing, but it's not always great to look at or gorgeous. I don't do pretty. I get that from my mom. Food, a bowl of soup, the pot of soup goes on the table and you ladle out of it. And everybody eats and then you clean up and you go to bed. That's how it works at our house. So I'm trying to think a little bit more outside the box. You never know when Bobby Flay might show up to do a cook-off with me. I would probably die if Bobby Flay ever showed up here to do a cook-off. So don't any of y'all ever submit my name to the Food Network for that. You understand me? All right, so I've made our cheese spread. And then this morning, I put together our tomato mixture, and I love using grape tomatoes. You can really use any kind of tomato you want and just chop them small, but grape tomatoes I think are the sweetest. Cherry tomatoes would certainly work if you wanted to, but I just quartered my tomatoes, drizzled olive oil over them so that they were nicely coated, and then I took fresh basil. I like to stack the leaves on top of each other and then roll them up kind of tight like you would a sleeping bag, and then use your knife to just finely chop through them. And that makes nice little, I think the technical term is julienne chop. Yes, what is it? Chiffonade, yes, thank you. And then added fresh garlic and a little bit of salt. And of course, this tastes better if you let it sit for at least 30 minutes. But there again, this can go in a Tupperware, go in the refrigerator, and you can keep it there for a couple of weeks. Olive oil and garlic are both natural preservatives. Nothing, so you could certainly leave this for a week in your refrigerator and have it on hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of the bread, we're going to spread just a little bit of the cheese mixture on it, we're going to spoon the tomatoes on, and then you're going to lay them all out on a cookie sheet and broil them at 500 for about 8 or 9 minutes. So I'm going to let the girls get started on that, and then those will bake, and we'll serve that with the soup. All right, I'm actually going to go ahead and just drop them in because it is like right at the barest bubble. So I'm actually going to go ahead and drop my dumplings in now. And I'm sorry, we're going to end up going over just a little bit. I'm just going to drop these down in. Nobody wants to leave in this weather, so they're okay. They don't care. So I'm just going to drop our little dumplings in. Yes, ma'am. The French bread loaf. No, I did not toast the rounds in advance for the crostinis. Those are just fresh. Now in the party class, when I did the cheese and apple chutney on those rounds, those were dehydrated. Those rounds were, so that they were more like a cracker. Weren't those good? I still have a little bit of apple chutney left too. I'm having that later for lunch. And no, y'all may not have any. It's all for me. Okay. I'm just gonna kind of make sure that this is all coated and they're pushed down in there kind of thing. And we're just gonna let this simmer and cook. And while we do that, we're gonna get our lemon juice ready. So I got a lot of lemon juice I gotta make. Grab a bowl really quick. Make sure I haven't gotten a text from my husband. No. All right. Lemons. You know, if you're gonna juice a lemon, roll it first. You can even pop them in the microwave and warm them up, and that helps them to release their juices. Also, if you have a recipe that ever calls for the zest of an orange or a lemon and the juice, be sure you zest it first before you cut it in half. Not implying that you guys are not smart. I've just done it myself and gone, what was I thinking? So zest it first. That little microplane zester that I used on the garlic, oh, it works awesome for zesting oranges and lemons. And this is, I'm going to leave this on, the cover on it so it doesn't actually zest. But this is the best way to zest something. Rotate the microplane zester like this, and then you can roll it around, and then you can see that you're not getting down to the white part. For the longest time, that's how I would zest something, when this is so much easier. And just rotate it around. Works really, really easy. All right, so let's all right, now I'm gonna squeeze my lemon juice into a bowl, and we're gonna whisk our lemon juice together with our eggs. We sell these little squeezers. I love it. We actually carry a yellow one. It's technically the lemon one, but these lemons were really big, and there was no way they would fit in the lemon zester. So, just between me and you, just get the orange one. Sorry. Because then you can do anything. And I just realized I really should be measuring this, shouldn't I? There we go. And 1/3 of a cup is about 2 lemons. Obviously, depending on the size lemon that you've got. And how juicy they are. There's our lemon juice. Like I said, if you don't care for lemon and dill, and you don't want to eat this, you're not going to hurt my feelings. That is one of those flavors that you either like or you don't. You know, if you don't care for dill, now of course I would ask you to adhere to the 2-bite rule, but you don't have to. I actually do not care for pickles. I don't like dill pickles. But I like vinegary things, and I like dill by itself. So I don't really understand that completely. I do. I don't like cucumber. So I think that's the whole gist of the problem. My husband says that I am a picky eater. I don't think that I am. I just have certain things that I like and certain things that I don't like. I don't think that makes me picky. But it's kind of funny because, like I said earlier, you know, I don't care for green beans, but I love spinach and I love asparagus and I like Brussels sprouts. So I'm not picky. I like lots of vegetables. There's just some that I don't care for. All right, so now we've got our dill and we're just going to let that sit and infuse with our lemon juice. I need to grab 2 more eggs out of the refrigerator, and we will whisk all of this together. If you guys have come to my classes before, especially the bread making ones, we talk about how I don't use an egg in my bread because we have chickens and we sell our eggs. Well, we decided to hatch out several eggs. My husband built an incubator, and we hatched out a dozen little chicks. They started hatching actually Sunday afternoon, and by Monday afternoon we had 10 of them. Two of them ended up not having baby chickens in them. So. But they were super cute. Oh, they absolutely loved it. In fact, it takes a baby chick a while to actually hatch out. You know, they start the process, and it takes them a little bit. And so we got home from church Sunday afternoon, and there was one, and it had worked its way around the shell, and it was close. And my daughter, she said, I'm going to sit down here and watch it for a little bit. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I said, but it's almost time for lunch, so you've only got a few minutes. And she said, okay. And sure enough, I was like, there's no way she's not gonna get to see anything. And about 2 minutes later, she comes squealing from downstairs. It hatched, it hatched. She got to watch the whole process. So they've now named them. We have Tuffy and Mackie and Poodle and Knight, like a knight in shining armor, not like black as night, even though the chick is black. I don't know. That's how a 7-year-old's mind thinks. So yeah. And Spunky. We have Spunky and Tuffy and Brownie and Little Brown. That's the creativity of a 5-year-old. So, but they are super, super cute. All right, I've got the oven ready for those. So whenever, in fact, will you bring a tray over so we can show it in the camera? I wanted you to see how yummy these look. Aren't those pretty? Yes, please go ahead, because they got to go 8 or 9 minutes, and we're almost done with this soup. All right, let's check on our dumplings over here. See how they've puffed up. A double recipe might have been pushing it in this pot, to be totally honest with you. That's okay. Now the way that the directions read, it has you, after you cook the dumplings, you actually take the dumplings out and spoon them into your individual bowls, and then serve the soup, whisk this into the soup, and then serve that over the bowls. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take the dumplings out with my little slotted spoon and put them in a bowl so that they can kind of cut them apart and divide them into all of y'all's bowls, and then we'll serve the soup over them. And that way we make sure that everybody gets part of that. I think that you could easily mix a gluten-free grain like sorghum with the popcorn instead of the soft wheat to make your dumplings. What would be, now if you have an egg allergy, well then you have a problem. But a dairy allergy or a gluten allergy, and you needed to make, this would be a very easy recipe to make gluten-free, and then of course it has no milk whatsoever or butter, which you're gonna be, I hope that you're as amazed as I was when I made this recipe and how creamy and smooth the broth is with no milk or butter. I was like, wow, the lemon and the egg really make a very light, refreshing broth. And I was shocked that it didn't have butter or milk in it. Okay, let's do this. I am running out of bowls. All right. No, I think I'm good. I'll use this one. We'll evict the lemons. All right, I'm just going to, I'm going to spoon out. And it's okay when you spoon this out if some of the kale comes with it. You know, obviously, it's just going to go right back into the soup anyway. And it's okay if some of the dumplings get left in there, because like I said, my husband, you know what, in fact, we're just going to chop it up right here. Because it really did, the dumplings did taste better when it was little bits and pieces of it all throughout the soup. So we're just going to break it up. We're just going to make this easier on everybody. So I'm just kind of smush the dumplings up. It's going to add some nice texture to the soup too. Can you freeze? I don't see why you couldn't freeze this soup. I think you certainly could. We are definitely pushing it in this pot. That is for sure. And I think what I'm going to do, just for simplicity's sake, I'm actually going to spoon out some of this boiling broth. And actually, that's what you're supposed to do. So I'm not a genius after all. So you're going to whisk some of the hot soup, the hot boiling soup, in with your egg and lemon juice mixture. That's going to cook your eggs right there. And now we're just going to turn off the heat. And we're going to add this back in. Now that is a big pot of soup. And it says whisk constantly for a minute with the heat off as it thickens. All right. We are going to plate this up. Is there any other questions before we say goodbye to our online guests? Anything? All right, you have a pressure cooker question? Well, go ahead and ask it.
And it's nothing to do with the cooking itself, but have you ever had a handle come loose?
Have I ever had a handle come loose? I have.
And is that common? I mean, just like,
Yes, there should be a screw underneath that you can tighten it.
I mean, I did.
Yes.
I mean, I've had that, but it keeps coming loose. And I took a pot of soup actually to a social that we had a week
Uh-huh.
ago. And as I was carrying it to the table, the whole handle came off and the soup poured all
Oh
over.
no.
And I just didn't know if that was, because I mean, I had like,
The next time you come in, bring it with you and let us just look at it. Make sure maybe there isn't a washer, hasn't been stripped or something like that, that it keeps loosening up. So yeah, just bring it in. Wasn't there was a question in the back, right? Oh yes, I meant to ask you how you liked the chicken corn chowder and the cornbread underneath, and the hot and sour soup. Did you enjoy that? Isn't that good? What?
we have a bad sale coming up on us.
Okay.
So we're just going to wrap it up.
Yep.
If anybody wants to stay and sample the last soup in the crostinis, that a self heading towards this direction in the next 20 minutes. You can stay here and take shelter and eat soup. But we're gonna kind of wrap it up. So if you'd like to leave and head towards the east, if you're going that way,
All right.
better area.
So goodbye to all the online guests if we haven't already said goodbye to them.